My client's an hour behind me, so they always get mixed up when it's like, it's only 5:15. Yeah, it's 6:15.
I'm sure it wasn't a Slack message.
Okay, you let my client know, stop all this.
The nice thing about being over here is you get your dedicated plug on the wall. You don't have to use that extension. You just dedicated.
Yeah, your table partner's always charged, so I never have to worry about that.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
So that reminds me of the time that I got caught on the lights at the state hospital event, and it took me like an hour and a half to get home from downtown Medfield to my house.
I was hedging, that's for sure. So you shut that off, shut that off. Do that. That's what it was. Go here, go there. I'm getting better at being preloaded with the
Jumping
Zoom
right in
link.
there.
Yeah. Let's start. What's that?
You tell me when.
I think I'm here.
You get all your paperwork over there?
That's all mine. I haven't even pulled my paperwork. I'm ready.
All right.
I'm just not sure why I'm not on this.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike, you're ready. All right, excellent. All right, good evening. Sorry we're a few minutes late getting underway here, but tonight is Tuesday, May 14th, Town of Medfield Select Board meeting. As everyone knows, this meeting is held in hybrid format. The Select Board will attend in person. Members of the public may attend in person. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate in Zoom may do so by joining the link, which is available on the Medfield webpage. Go to the Select Board, pull down menu, you'll find the link. You'll also see that if you don't have access to Zoom, we do have a dial-in number. And then most importantly, the packet for tonight's meeting is available for anyone to tap into and view as we go through this evening. And then quick change from what we normally have here. Instead of the mic that is normally near you, Bill, we now have a mic right up at the microphone. So if anyone wants to speak, all we're going to do is ask you to step up to the microphone and turn the microphone on. Alrighty? This meeting is being recorded, which is always nice because you can always watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on medfieldtv.com. So on that note, we would like to take a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of our country. All right, appointments. Number one, MAPC to present the final IE district presentation to the Select Board. All right. Well, you, Maria, if you guys want to present, you can do the podium. Anyone asking questions, we're going to ask to go to the. Thank you.
Hello? Okay.
And the microphone there won't echo. It's so that people at home can hear you watching it on TV or they're being recorded.
Okay, got it. Setting up a little timer here.
And I am going to ask, because there is a fan running, if everyone could speak up a little bit louder, because it's super hard to hear when that's running, but if it's not running, we're all going to sweat to death.
All right, cool. And will you be running through this?
Yes, I just wanted to start
Presenters tend to be shorter when they start sweating.
So it's a tactic.
You let the cat out of the bag. That was our strategy, guys. We have our summer hour, you see.
Yeah. Well, that's why I have a timer here. I'm going to try my hardest to kind of stay within reasonable. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Select Board and everyone for letting me present today. My name is Avanti. I'm with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, or MAPC, and we're going to try to just briefly go over, what we've been doing over the last year with the industrial district in Medfield. Can I go ahead and next slide? So this is like just an overview of the presentation for today. In an effort to kind of keep it brief, I am probably going to be skipping over some slides, but the presentation that you're seeing here will be available to everyone after this meeting. And all this information that I present today will culminate in a final report that will be put out to the town in June. So let me go ahead. I just want to also take a moment to express gratitude and appreciation for the project team that's been helping for the last year. Some of my colleagues at MAPC, Joss and Angela, couldn't be here, but have been advising on this project. And then just want to extend thank you and appreciation to Maria, to Gus, to Doug, and Christine for also kind of serving in an advisory capacity on this project. So just to kind of orient everybody, start timer. Just to kind of orient everybody with the geography that we're talking about. We're specifically talking about the geography that is zoned as the Industrial Extensive District. So it's encapsulating that Medfield Junction and that intersection with North Meadow Street and West Mill Street. Next slide. And the focus of this project, kind of starting last summer, was really to kind of design and leverage a community planning effort to create a vision for the industrial zone. So MAPC has been working with the town to kind of think about potential recommendations for zoning. That's also kind of aligned with, previous planning efforts calling to amend zoning bylaw language so that it actually reflects the uses and the users in that zone. Another really big goal that I just want to emphasize too is that part of working with this district, we were thinking about how do you support and expand the commercial and industrial tax base. And that really has kind of been the mindset that we've been going in with this for the last year. And this is just to really, again, emphasize that this aligns with goals that we've heard from the select board and also from the town's master plan on bolstering that tax base so that we can reduce the reliance on residential taxes. So like I said, we started last summer. We kind of started with an inventory of existing conditions, and we actually, in the fall, produced a memo summarizing those conditions, and I believe that's available online on the website, so you can take a look at all the summary of our findings there. Then we kind of embarked on this community visioning process. We had 2 community visioning sessions, which I'll briefly go over, and as you can kind of see, we're now at the point where we're taking, some of what we heard in those sessions and compiling them into recommendations and into a final vision statement that'll really summarize where we want to take the IE district and go with it. So these next few slides I'm going to kind of go through because I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Industrial Extensive District, but we did do a really deep analysis at MAPC to orient ourselves. We went through different previous planning documents, and we kind of wanted to be mindful of how the IE district would play a role in the larger economic development scheme and strategy. So we wanted to think about, well, what's also happening in downtown? What are the opportunities with Medfield State Hospital? And what we want to make sure is that however we discuss the IE district, we're talking about it in a way where it's complementing and supplementing other economic activity, not necessarily competing with those areas for activity. So we were kind of looking at, the first thing was actually looking at how the land is being used and looking at industrial uses and looking at the mix of scales and buildings that are in the area. You can skip this slide and go next. The one thing I really want to emphasize is that the mix of businesses is really unique in this district. Arts, entertainment, and recreation, 20% of the employment in the IE district is in arts, entertainment, and recreation relative to town-wide, only 3%. So there's some really unique concentrations with not just that, but also construction, but wholesale trade and manufacturing, which is a little bit more expected and obvious. So what we really found was that there is an opportunity for this to maybe be an employment hub and to kind of have high quality, high paying jobs in this area and concentrating. This is just kind of to acknowledge that we also were thinking about industrial land and opportunities On the regional context, we were kind of looking at larger wide economic trends with regards to supply and demand, and really within like this 495 belt Metro West market, what would the opportunities be? A part of our process was also talking with stakeholders, namely business owners or property owners or other real estate professionals who work in the area. And that really kind of gave us a good idea of the different advantages and disadvantages that exist with doing business in the IE district. And as you'll see later, that kind of gets reflected in one of our recommendations. So going into the community visioning sessions, our first session was in December. And really the goal of this session was just to kind of orient people with the project, but also kind of get their opinion on what kind of uses they would like to see in the area, kind of think about what do you see the future of this district being? How would you like to see it evolve? And so, in addition to that, we also had a follow-up survey. So when we compiled both the survey results and what we heard from the town meeting, we found that people felt like there wasn't a variety of businesses and services in the IE district, that they kind of want to see a range of fun things to do, and people did acknowledge that, contribution to the commercial tax revenue base is really important as well. When we kind of kept tagging on, what specifically would you like to see, people brought up wholesale and retail trade, people talked about food and beverage, arts, entertainment, and recreation. So I think these are answers that are similar to what people want in Medfield generally, and I think that also came through with what people wanted to see in the IE district. So taking that information, at MAPC, we were kind of working with, different advisors with Maria to kind of think about how we can draft a vision statement and what recommendations we can distill from what we heard. So we used the second community visioning session to really kind of to really get targeted feedback on our proposals. We also wanted to kind of get more specific on exactly the type of uses people wanted to see, and we kind of wanted to set up a ranking system so people would be forced to actually choose. If you had to pick the top 3 uses you want to see in the district, this is what it would be. So we had the second community visioning session. It was virtually held in March. We presented our vision statement and we kind of talked about uses, and a lot of people mentioned, well, I kind of want to see more of a North Star in the vision statement. I want to know more about how the IE district is going to complement activities happening in downtown. And some folks even mentioned seeing more on business growth, seeing more about job growth. From our survey, which we conducted following that second session, we asked people again to rank these different uses from 1 to 10. And what was really interesting was that 70 to 80% of the respondents to our survey ranked research and development and suitable food and drink establishments as within the top 5 uses they'd like to see in the district. And at least half of the survey respondents also said they want to see manufacturing, wholesale trade, flex space. So, I think the community's expectations are somewhat responding to what's there and also kind of thinking more futuristically on what could be there. So that was very optimistic to see. We also presented 5 different strategies at that meeting, and then coming out of that meeting, we decided to kind of distill it down to 3 strategies that would really focus more on the zoning and business development practices. So that's kind of the context heading for, the recommendations that I have for you today. We'll kind of start with the vision statement. A vision statement is kind of just a statement that's outlining what Medfield wants to see this IE district evolve into and what our ambitions are leading up into that. So this is kind of a 6-part vision statement. I'm going to try my hardest with my glasses to read what's on the screen, but starting with this first point, the IE district will play a strategic role in achieving Medfield's broader economic development aims, working in tandem with other local hubs of economic activity as complementary parts of a whole. I'm really testing my eyesight. Specifically, the IE district will serve as an employment base in Medfield, creating attractive and accessible job opportunities for the town and the region. The IE district will reflect a vibrant mix of industrial, light industrial, and commercial uses, intentionally co-located to create a cohesive and connected sense of place for employees and residents. Industrial and light industrial uses will respond to modern-day economic needs of the town and region, supporting small to medium-sized manufacturing businesses and R&D activities in emerging and creative sectors. Commercial activity in the IE district will leverage the area's innate strengths and adapt to local market preferences. Employees and residents will be able to benefit from the unique confluence of food and drink amenities, as well as other artisanal and recreational activities that are well suited to the building characteristics of the IE district and supplement the vibrant activity in Medfield's other commercial districts. Medfield residents, employees, and businesses will be able to easily access the IE district from the town. As the town. Thank you. As the town works.
Do you want me to read it for you?
Sure, thank you.
As the town works with various stakeholders to develop safer and well-connected streets and sidewalks within the IE district and across the town generally.
Thank you so much. Okay, supported by these features, the IE district will ultimately play a key role in the generation of heightened commercial tax revenue and the consequent greater diversification of the tax base. That last statement I pretty much had memorized. So these are our 3 high-level recommendations for the district. We can go ahead and go into the first one, which is really talking about updating the table of uses to reflect priority uses. Go ahead. So I'll try to go through this pretty briefly, but we talked a lot about, the different kind of uses that we would like to allow by right. And we thought for the IE district, light manufacturing, which is kind of a less intensive process that doesn't produce as much noise or as many emissions, would be appropriate in this district to be allowed by right. We also talked about artisan production, and you can kind of think about that as like, handcrafted products that require very low levels of machinery or manual labor. We also talked about food production. That would include breweries or microbreweries. That can include confectionery manufacturing. Again, it would kind of include some of those sectors that are industrial but not producing as much noise or emissions in the process. And then we also kind of talked about including creative studio space for artists or filmmakers, kind of a nod and acknowledgement to some of the filmmaking activity that Medfield's attracted. In terms of upgrading existing uses to by right, we talked about including retail, business offices and services that would, kind of also accommodate for co-working spaces or flex space and miscellaneous repair services. Yeah, please.
So some of the reasoning for promoting uses by right is that currently in most of the town, anything you do, like if I have a restaurant and then I want to sell it to someone else, it's the exact same restaurant, same type of food, same everything, I'm just changing ownership. That still requires a 3-month permitting process through the zoning board and $550 in fees between the legal ad and the application. So those are the kind of things that can really stop a new business owners in its tracks. The financing element, when you start construction, all of those things are very sensitive. So if there's a use that is not changing, you're just changing ownership, I think we should include provisions in our industrial district to allow those type of minimal changes to happen by right. So we could work on writing zoning that specifies the specific criteria by which something can be granted by right. If you meet all of those, you get a building permit. Otherwise, you can go back to the zoning board and we can have an open discussion about it. but this will help make the town a little more business friendly and help promote that economic development as well.
We should make that change in all of the zoning districts so that businesses that are coming to locate here don't have to go through a 3-month process of paying the rent and getting permitted.
Yes, that's one of my intentions this summer when we're going to be rewriting the zoning bylaws for 2026. So I would like to take a look at how we can be more business friendly, more accessible to everyone.
'Cause when I was on the ZBA, we had lots of businesses coming in and it seemed to always trigger that they had to come to the ZBA and get a permission.
Almost always.
And it was an expensive process for them.
Yes.
It's not friendly.
No, not just the cost of the application, but the opportunity cost of letting go of 3 months of potential revenue. So
Well, and
especially-
also they're often paying rent on the space already,
Yes.
so.
it's a discretionary approval too. So if they say no, there goes your business. So it's a little scary. A lot of risk to assume.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's like kind of the mindset we have going through all of these like zoning recommendations.
Yes.
Next slide. Yeah, this one and this one, yeah. So kind of in response to that community interest in the R&D and in the arts, entertainment, recreation, manufacturing, some of the uses that we wanted to elevate to by right, but with site plan approval from the planning board, would be research and development, manufacturing. We kind of wanted to take recreational activities and specify within the zoning code indoor recreational activities to be allowed as by right with plan approval, and kind of excluding the outdoor recreational aspect as a not permitted use. And then establishments selling food and drink. Again, that was clearly something that a lot of folks from Medfield wanted to see in the district, and we kind of want to keep that in mind for by right uses. We can kind of skip over this only because there's not too many substantial changes to the uses by special permit. And as I mentioned, the not permitted uses, we just want to take recreational activities and specify that indoor recreation could be allowed by right with site plan approval. Outdoor recreation would be a not permitted use. Yeah.
So real quickly, our logistics for that is that if something was going to be generate larger traffic or have a larger building footprint that could potentially, impact the neighborhood, we do want to retain some local control and make it approval through the planning board. It would still be a yes with the conditions of public health, safety, and welfare and some basic requirements. So you're pretty much guaranteed a yes, but the town does retain control to modify things to protect those items. So we would be opening up new uses and making sure that they fit with the neighborhood and all the mitigation work is being done. So that's a compromise we found.
And if you were to do something like that, would there be a butter notices going out so people who might not be paying attention would be given a heads up as to this is what could be going on, these are the requested changes?
Yeah, I believe site plan approval does require a 300-foot abutter notice.
Okay.
And yeah, we could try to make a process a little easier. Some of them could be administrative in nature if it's, depending on the footprint. Some of them might require an actual hearing and a process, so we can differentiate between the two and make a minor and major site plan approval. So it's a little faster for the smaller.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, the next recommendation kind of revolves around the dimensional regulations, updating the table of height and the table of height and bulk regulations with priority uses reflected. And this is kind of to give the area a more cohesive look and feel. This image below, I think it's Electric Time Company, and this is just kind of for reference as I'm talking through these different dimensions. But starting with the minimum lot requirements, I think the idea was to reduce the minimums just to kind of allow for more flexibility so some of those uses we were describing could actually come in. So, it was things like reducing the minimum lot from 40,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And similarly, reducing frontage, width, and depth from 200 to 100 feet. And you can kind of see in this chart that these numbers, we also were kind of looking at what other communities are doing with their industrial districts. We actually looked at the business industrial district that's in Medfield to also kind of serve as a comparison point for, these proposed numbers that we're looking at. In terms of the minimum yard and setbacks, for the front yard, we actually thought 25 feet was a pretty appropriate front yard regulation. For the side and the rear, again, just to kind of make the feel more cohesive, we wanted to kind of bring it in more to 10 feet, but if it's a budding residential district, then it would maintain the 25-foot buffer. Kind of getting into the height in terms of feet and stories. Now we're talking about maximums, and I think the idea was that, again, just to be more flexible in allowing some of those potential uses to come into the IE district if they come. We want to take the height and just kind of modestly increase it from 35 feet to 40 feet. And in terms of the number of stories, increase it from 2 to 4. And then in terms of the floor area ratio, which kind of determines the density that's kind of allowed on the lot, we're just suggesting, again, for more flexibility to increase that from a maximum of 0.5 to 1. And you can kind of see in the diagrams how that would influence building composition on a lot. But it's just allowing for a little bit more.
Our rationale for changing the dimensional requirements was that in an industrial district, you want to make sure that you're using as most of the building as you can. Typically, there are the most generous of dimensional zoning requirements. In our case, we have the BI district, business industrial. That is our most lenient zoning. We wanted to keep the lot size a little bit big because we want to attract business uses that are going to be unique to this neighborhood. We don't want to make lot sizes too small because that's our downtown. That's the mom and pop shops. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we're retaining some of that large usable space because Medfield doesn't have much of that. But at the same time, we do want to allow people to be able to build an addition or a new room or maximize their space without having to come in front of the zoning board for a special permit or a variance. And these new setbacks would allow them a little bit more leeway, maybe an extra floor of space. It could encourage redevelopment, which would be really great for the tax base. Along with the new uses. So the increase in stories, that really depends on the type of use. Research and development will need a lot higher ceilings, but an artist studio, you could fit 4 floors and, pretty like household average story height. Mm-hmm. So that would allow it to make it a lot more profitable and increase the redevelopment opportunities if anyone was so inclined.
And this last recommendation around supporting new and existing businesses, I think Maria actually already kind of nailed it on the head with talking about how we can better reform the streamlining processes so that it's not as burdensome for businesses. So we kind of this is kind of one of the recommendations that we're still working out on our end, but we are trying to think about ways to make sure that, non-substantial changes that aren't really like changing the use or the space or the area that much, those aren't going to trigger a special permit process. And then Maria's also working, I think, on other initiatives like creating a how to do business guide, which would be great for Medfield generally, and then particularly for the IE district as well. So I think with that, we can kind of wrap up. If you go to the next slide really quickly, I'll just note that if you want more detail, this presentation we do plan on making available, and we also will have all this information publicly available and compiled in a final report that MAPC will put out in June and give to the town. Thank you.
Great. Pete, any questions?
Yes. Questions and comments both. Mm-hmm. So 2 of the 3 select board members are seeing this just for the first time right now as you're going through it. So I haven't had a chance to digest it and have a real reaction for you, but I do have some thoughts as I've listened to you. One would be, I think if you do this sort of planning in the future, I would include the full select board in the process of planning as you go along, rather than just coming with a final product to the select board the way you've done in this instance.
To be fair, we were invited. Like I went to the first session. I was out of town.
I went to the sessions, yes, and but we're seeing a final product here, and.
Yeah, I will say it's not finalized yet, and so that part of this presentation is to get feedback. And I also am happy to exchange contact information with you, so you can email me directly between now and June if you have ideas or you feel like we're missing the mark in certain areas. I'm happy to kind of start making sure you feel like your comments are kind of
Yeah,
incorporated.
and I'll get into that in just a second. And as I say, I haven't had a chance to fully digest it yet, but I do have some thoughts about it already from listening to you. I also sat and talked to Maria and gave her my thoughts as it went along as well. So first of all, you several times talked about the goal being to increase the commercial industrial tax base. I've listened to Mr. Murby and our former selectman, Mr. Marcucci, discuss that issue endlessly, very lengthy, I guess I would say, about a piece of property that's in the I-8 area. And we had evidence that it would be more tax revenue to the town, more net income, if it was residential use as opposed to commercial industrial use. So what I see in my mind is that I want to increase the amount of tax revenue that the town gets, net tax revenue, so that if there's a use that is different than commercial and industrial that returns us more money, I think the town should be looking at that.
And for the record, Pete and I don't agree on that, so we've had these discussions, and I don't agree with that. Because if you rely on residents solely for taxes, and if the goal is we want to have people without children pay lots of taxes, you're going down a path of an exclusive neighborhood that has no employment opportunities. So I'm not trying to turn the whole town into industrial, but we don't agree on that, so.
So let me, before you respond, Maria, let me just explain to Avanti that we have a development here in Medfield called Old Village Square, which is 42 units of houses that sold for between $800,000 and $1 million each. It's a condo project. The houses are built, they're single families, but they're built 12 feet apart. The last time I checked on those 42 units, there was one school child living in that complex. And so that complex of residential development returns a net profit to the town of probably over $600,000 a year of taxes over municipal costs, because given the way that it's built, parents of school-age children opt to not live there. So that I think that there are opportunities to build residential uses that actually can return more money than business and industrial uses. And I wouldn't build business, industrial, commercial uses just to have them. I would look for more tax revenue and maximize the tax revenue. So that would be my focus. So that's my first point for you. You talked about jobs, and I guess I wasn't quite sure how. Do you have some sort of sense that there's a market that people want to build businesses in Medfield? My sense is that we haven't seen a lot of people rushing to build businesses in town. We had like a 12-acre school parcel just behind us here that was marketed for business use for a long time. Nobody wanted to put a business there, and we finally ended up with an exempt educational use from which we used to get $150,000 in real estate taxes from it, but now we get zero because nobody wanted to put a business there. So do you have some sort of assurance that we actually have people that want to bring businesses to Medfield?
I can respond to that. Yeah. So I think if you look in our existing conditions analysis, we did kind of look into what the demand would be, particularly with some of the more industrial uses, but also more broadly commercial. And I think there is, especially within this 495 Metro West market, there is modest demand. And I think, there is a benefit to having a diversity of uses in the town to kind of build up the economic resilience of the town. Because you don't want to 100% rely on residential, or when, even post-pandemic, and we've seen, even in early 2000s, all of these different types of markets, the commercial market, the residential market, they all go through swings and ups. The industrial market actually has been relatively resilient for the greater Boston region, and we did find also for the Metro West region. What we're also finding is that industrial space is getting really, really expensive in Boston, in like those inner core areas. So that demand is actually starting to kind of trickle out to the Metro West region. I can't, 100% guarantee or assure that businesses are going to come, but we can create the zoning conditions so that if they do come, we have a flexible zoning that would embrace that and allow for that.
If I may add to your first point, Pete, I think that the reason we started looking at the variety of uses was because one of the select board goals was to have 10% of the tax revenue of the town come from non-residential sources. Mm-hmm. So even while there might be some residential uses that are very profitable, it's also about the quality of life of the residents. You can live in Medfield in a beautiful, beautiful condo in a very nice neighborhood, but if you have to drive 15 minutes to the nearest restaurant, then that's not super accommodating. We want to make sure that we have some local jobs, some local industries. We want to make sure we're able to capture our own residents' demands for entertainment, food, shopping, retail. Just, it's, the little things that make a difference. So I think that's why we started looking at how can we make our permitting more accessible. One of the master plan goals is also to be more business friendly. So currently Old Village Square is allowed by a special permit on the residential urban zone. There's nothing stopping other developers from coming and developing more developments like that is currently allowed. So what we're looking for is we have zoning for that. We have now the MBTA zoning, but we're looking for how can we expand commercial. So the planning will also be looking at into mixed use zoning for the downtown. So we're looking at this from multiple angles. We have addressed our residential needs through zoning this year, and we're hoping to address our commercial needs in the coming years as well. Just variety, quality of life, entertainment.
And I think you have to be very careful as to what uses you let in, because I think we've got a rock crushing operation in the IE district, and I'm not sure that adds a lot to the quality of life of the residents of Medfield. I mean, it adds more dust and there. I mean, the reason that the town bought the land where the Kingsbury Club is located is because I think there was a rumor that there was a glass crushing facility that was looking at that site, and so I think that you have to be careful of what uses you do end up with in the industrial extensive, because there are some that people in town would not find compatible and ones that they would want to invite in. So that one of the other things that, and I'm not sure if you specifically looked at this or not, but I think I explained it to you when we talked, Maria, that my sense was that the office building use is not permitted in that district, and I always thought that was a big mistake. I mean, buildings like at 67 West Street, I think, that has office space in it now. It's where my gym is, and there are a bunch of offices in there. I think that makes absolute sense to have office space in that industrial extensive use, but I'm not sure that it's permitted across the board there. I thought that we just carved out a section around the intersection of West and 27 to permit it. But so I would encourage you to make sure that we can allow for office space.
I think that was added.
One of our proposed suggestions was elevating that to by right use.
Yeah, good. The other thing that I see when I look at the uses along West Street is that for some reason they all built very far back from the street, which to me creates a very odd sort of look to that neighborhood. And if you're having, I see that the setback is something like 25 feet. I don't know why they all opted to build like 100 or 150 feet back, but they did.
The residents that live across the street are thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think if I was building and I saw a neighbor's house right across the street and I wanted to be friendly, instead of being right in front of them and I know I'm a commercial use, when I drive by, I swear it's the first thing that pops up. I think that there was a neighborhood friendly, they have the room, let's set back so we're not right in their face. Because it's not a ranch house or a colonial, it's an industrial park.
So the park is built right at closer to the street than all of those industrial commercial buildings. And I've talked to the people that live across the street there, and they're fine with the park. I mean, they were very worried about it when it was going in, but once it was in, they seemed very, very satisfied.
It's residential, which is good.
those are my main comments, but I'll take a look and let you know, Avanti. Thanks for bringing it. Appreciate your help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, please, any of you feel free to contact me too and follow up. Definitely want to make sure we're incorporating your feedback appropriately.
Yes, and I just want to note that this is also just a study. When it comes to the fact of actually changing the zoning, we will partner with the select board again as we did with the MBTA zoning. Your feedback was incredible for MBTA, so I want to keep a working group. So this is just, a study. We'll go a little further in developing guidelines. You will be involved in that process. We'll do more joint meetings. It'll be an 18-month long process to rewrite the zoning. So there will be plenty of opportunities to weigh in and address issues as they come up. So, thank you.
Yes.
Just first, Pete's initial comment about the involvement. If I'd known you wanted to be more involved, that's probably on me for being the main contact, but I actually think my involvement was the public meetings, and I think we had two. And the more important thing is, I actually do see this as a draft. I think this was always in the flow, as this was the point where a formal presentation would have been made to the select board. So to the extent either of you feel cut out, I'll take ownership of that. I didn't know you were that interested, particularly given the MBTA Communities Act. I have to confess, I probably got that more of my bandwidth went in that direction. But anyway, I take the feedback, and certainly this is not intended to jam down certainly our throat or anybody's throat at this point. The residential thing, I said enough, and we will undoubtedly have debates about that for a long time to come. The only comment I'd have, and this is for people who are listening, as a person who is looking at this, I think there's two things that kind of caught me by surprise in terms of my own perspective. One is, in thinking about this IE zone, you got the businesses that are there, and some of those are full-blown industrial businesses. And then there's some others that are more commercially, consumer-oriented. They tend to be the ones that wound up at the Potpourri site, which has started to be kind of an interesting place. People like to go there for pizza. Why? Well, it's down a hole. Nobody can see it. You have to know it's there almost. Same thing with Farthest Star Sake is another thing that's pretty out there in terms of your standard fare in a town. So as I was trying to think of the IE zone, I found myself saying, well, there's this place that used to be a company warehouse that seems to want to turn it into something that's more consumer-oriented. There's just a little bit of, it's not funky exactly, but it could be. And so in trying to think about a single answer for a zone, I think some of what you heard, when people say we want to go to the IE zone to do fun stuff, it's like that's not what an IE zone is normally there for. But that one part of our IE zone, I've kind of come on board with the idea that, maybe that's the place for the fun stuff. So just to understand that piece of it. The other thing around without getting into the debate about housing, one of the points that Avanti put into the draft that I edited a little, but the point that we're looking to provide attractive and accessible employment for people here in town, I think there's a piece of that matters if you want to retain some of what Medfield has been for a long time. We'll never make it Medfield of the 1980s or 90s, but the idea that the town actually cares and is thinking about people who live in town that might actually want to work in town, and we have ways of getting there without sacrificing the entire town or anything, I think matters. And in many ways, I'm making an assumption here, but the people who live in our 40B developments are probably some people who could most be advantaged by either being able to either walk or ride a bike to their job. So to the extent that some of those people might find that these kinds of jobs that are attractive and accessible, that to me seems to be of value to the town.
Thank you very much. I certainly took tonight's presentation as a draft, kind of like, okay, this is what we've heard, let's present it to the select board, so I get that. But when I hear IE and people want to go there as a destination, I kind of have correct me if I'm wrong, like Norwood has an art center where it's like a huge warehouse and there's all these little cubbies, and if you want to go in and find all sorts of, you know, off the wall, whether you're looking for lamps or mirrors or antique furniture. So that's why I think when we look at Potpourri, like that building, there's so much funky opportunity. And then when you have the ability to bring in commercial businesses, you never know when you're going to hit the home run, right? And when you hit the home run, it's the place where people want to go, and you've got the constant flow of foot traffic. And when you bring that type of foot traffic in, then you get the people that are then going to go to Mother Anna's and to Noon Hill Grill and to all the different restaurants. So, you know, today I think we're lacking in that. So looking at this report and knowing that we're trying to draw more, whether it be people that are going to be selling goods or manufacturing goods, but then bringing people to Medfield as a destination, to me is a win-win. I don't see, knowing that we're going to have, knock on wood, everything stays on track with the state hospital, 334 new apartments. I'm not looking to bring that many more residents into town. I'd be looking more to bring in more opportunities for our residents that are in town. So on that note, I look forward to see kind of where we go next steps. I'll watch for the meetings as we roll into 24, 25, 26. But thank you.
So Eileen, can I just ask you on that last point? Are you aligning with Gus then? You're more in favor of commercial industrial tax base as opposed to getting greater revenue for the town? So that if we got more revenue out of the residential, you'd pick the commercial industrial use over it the way Gus would.
What you didn't hear me say is, if we have a home run and it brings in let's just say it's a business that is just one of those, it's what everyone wants and where they're going. It's not, am I interested in bringing in money? Yeah, but I also want to look at when you bring in those residentials, there's also a cost of water, there's a cost of traffic, there's a lot of costs that go into that. And it's not just the dollars that come in. Are you then balancing it with you're taking a gamble that they're not going into our schools? So when I look at commercial, there's certain things you can block off. So I go with the bet that it's less burden on our town, I think in the last year we've heard so much discussion about water usage in this town. You build X number of new homes, you've got that much more water being used, and we know we have water being used as we go up to the state hospital. So I look at what I know is coming versus what I know we don't have today, and that's where I lean. So I lean, you know? No pun intended.
So I double checked our code, and currently trucking and warehousing is allowed as of right with a site plan from the planning board. And that's a use that, in my experience, is a red flag to consider. I know in Franklin and the surrounding towns, Bellingham, now maybe it's because they're out at the intersection of the interstates and all, and we're a little bit off the beaten path, but the new growth we're seeing is a lot of warehousing for speculative purposes with attendant truck traffic, heavy truck traffic. And ironically, Potpourri was originally built as a warehouse, but that's, in my opinion, a use that you'd want to look at rather with caution.
Sure.
And truck terminals tend to operate all night long, so that because they're sorting and loading
that too.
in the middle of the night, and that often creates real problems for your residential neighbors that can hear it.
But I look at today, I think La Pearl's back there, they've been around town forever. And so you have some of these industrial areas where you can have people that own businesses that can keep their trucks, keep their supplies, have their employees come and go. It's not something that we should take lightly. It's when you look at more and more young entrepreneurs moving to this town, we should give them some sort of resource so they can stay in their own backyard and not have to commute to another town if we can keep it here.
Thank you for that caution, though. I did take note of that.
Any comments from the audience? Bill? Are you stepping up to the mic?
I am.
Okay, no, turn it on, Mike. Is that?
Yep.
Is that still Bill's mic? It's just that we've got it parked
I
there?
was going to say, Bill, how do you like your mic
It
stand?
was a lot easier to turn on from back there.
Yeah, we can see you better now.
Cindy was concerned about your step count, so now we're making.
Broke it already. Man.
Did you break it? Of course I did.
No, it's there.
I just, several years ago, I believe there was an effort to go for, as of right, for environmentally associated industries, like solar panels and what have you. And at the time, I remember going through finding out that there had been a hazardous material Industrial Hazardous Material Committee at one point, but they hadn't met in like 7 or 8 or 10 years. So I would just point out that when you get into as of right for some kind of light industry, you ought to make sure that you have some way of ensuring that if they use hazardous materials, that the town reviews that. It's very important because there isn't anything that's used in the solar panel industry that doesn't cause birth defects and what have you. So this is important not to lose sight of that.
That's huge.
We had that discussion on the R&D labs. It's like on the surface, R&D, that's what we want. It's like an R&D biolab.
Biohazard.
And so
Biohazard.
I think, point well taken, that
Yes.
we would want to word it in a way that we're not talking about a regional trucking terminal, which doesn't seem to be a major threat for Medfield anyway, given where we're located. But on the other hand, I also, speaking personally, I look and say, and I don't think we want to make changes that take a look at the existing businesses we have and send a message that we really wish you weren't here. So that's a Leader, or it's a Save a Tree, that's Sam White. For that matter, it's even the moving company that's over there on West Mill, right at the corner there. What I don't know whether we were smart about it or just lucky, but we created an IE zone when Medfield first established it, in probably almost the only place in town, and I live up there, so it's not like I'm so far away I don't have a clue. That's probably the only place in town you probably could have put an IE zone that wouldn't have intruded on a good number of people who just wanted to live somewhere. And I'm not saying so don't worry about what they do, but if there was a place in town to put an IE zone with easy access to Route 109 and Route 27, that would have been, which is sort of, despite the fact I live close to it, I'm sort of protective of letting that be an IE zone, at least within limits.
And I think just to respond to that point quickly, I think that's a really good caution. And one of the things I didn't mention was one of our recommendations will be to make sure there are very clear and concrete definitions of what we're talking about so that we can kind of get a little bit at what the cautions of different emerging sectors and industries are allowed and what we actually want to promote. This is a high level draft. That is going to be more on the implementation side as you guys start to figure out the wording.
Yeah, and solar uses are protected by the Dover Amendment, so we can prohibit them. And I've heard the environmental concerns before, but one of the reasons for denying a Dover type use was public health and safety. So that's where the chemicals come in. So if it's a solar use, that'll regulate that. But if we by right zoning for anything else like light manufacturing, we'll clearly define what is light manufacturing. And once we cross a threshold into hazardous chemicals, it'll be a discretionary approval to protect public health.
I believe we zoned that down there in order to qualify as part of our green communities requirements. That's how it got there right now.
Are we good?
I'm good.
Thank you very
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to number 2, R.E. Brown Company to provide exit conference for fiscal year 2023 audit.
Hello.
Hello.
I do not have a slide presentation. My name is Bob Brown. This is the first year we audited the town of Medfield for fiscal '23. Just to introduce my firm, we've been doing 20 to 30 local municipal audit engagements per year since 1987. We have 2 CPAs and 2 full-time senior staff with 13 and 20 years experience. We're a small firm, but we always send out highly experienced staff, and have tried to focus on quality rather with the balance of the growth, so. As a result of the audit, we produced 2 audit opinions. There's an audit opinion on the financial statements of the town. We only own the opinion, the statements of the towns and the footnotes. There's also a management discussion analysis that precedes the financials that is written by the town as well. The other audit report is a federal grant audit report, where we give an opinion on the federal grant expenditures and compliance. The financial statement audit had a clean opinion. We didn't offer any real audit adjustments that were required to be entered in the town ledgers or anything. The single audit report also had no findings, which is very good because I think 3/4 of our clients have findings on, especially the last few years you've had COVID monies and ARPA monies, and instruction hasn't always been that good as to what you can and can't do, and what they change the rules, so there's often been findings, but there were no findings in this report. One thing I like to mention when looking at the financials, we consider the budget statement, which is on page 20, to be the most important statement because, you know, local town governments in Massachusetts, they live by the budget, you know. I better get my glasses on. So the budget statement is on page 20. And the far right column is the important positive information. The town's actual revenue exceeded the budgeted revenue by $1.7 million. And out of a $72 million budget, around $1 million, almost $9 million, was returned and unspent. So there was a net plus of $3.6 million based on the budget operations that year. I don't recall how much, I didn't make note of it, but obviously the town usually uses some of its own funds toward the budget. So the $3.6 million is plus, you know, have to look in relation to what you also contributed to fund, whether it's free cash or other funding. The other statement I like to point out is page 24 to 25. There's fiduciary fund statements. This has to do with your post-employment benefits liability. This came in about 100% liability about 10 years ago, and governments had to start funding it. It was a very slow start, but you have a fairly healthy balance of $6.7 million and contributed $500,000 in fiscal 23. So from what I see in my client base, you're doing well on that. It's still a long road to go. The pension, the OPEB liability itself is still 21 million about. I'm sorry,
27.
Almost 28 million. The pension liability is about 21 million. I like to also mention there's a pension liability for teachers. The state handles that liability. They contributed 6.9 million about to the teachers' retirement system in fiscal 23 for the town of Medfield. The liability related to the town of Medfield is 84 million, and the statewide for teachers is almost 26 billion. So we're funding our OPEB liability and pension. The state also has some responsibilities on their behalf for the town as well. I also usually want to point to the balance sheet on page 16. It's the only place in these statements where you will see what's termed a general fund. When the town provides statements to the state for free cash, there'll always be a general fund column and special revenue, capital projects, trust funds. Under generally accepted accounting principles, they all get condensed into some combinations. So the general fund balance sheet shows a plus fund balance of 20.6 million. The one there, and the unassigned is 11.4 million. The one thing I want to mention about that is there's one change we make to the general fund based on an accounting standard of number 54, GASB 54, we're required to blend all the stabilization funds into the general fund. So when you see that 11 million in the unassigned, it includes the $3.1 million stabilization fund. So the unassigned, if we didn't add the stabilization fund to it, would have been 8.3 million, which is a good unassigned number, which results in a fairly healthy free cash, I imagine. The audit team, I mean, your finance team does a good job. We didn't have any issues no major issues to comment on. We're pleased to have Medfield as a client. Everything looks pretty good, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer, if I can.
Thanks for taking us on, and thanks for coming in and explaining it tonight. So I've only looked at this very quickly.
Sure.
So that I guess my general question is, there's nothing for us to be concerned about. Is that what you're saying?
No, if you had, there's a certain letter we have to write if there's a significant deficiency or group of significant deficiencies that would create a material weakness in internal control so that your financial statements would be inaccurate. We would have to write that up. And we didn't come close to finding anything like that.
Okay. So this is like a clean opinion then?
Yes. I mean, our opinion says your statements fairly represent. Nothing's ever going to be to the penny represents. The audit would cost quite a bit of money if you wanted that.
The attorneys for the auditors have come up with great language to create the representation so that I understand that people get sued. So I guess you mentioned, you touched on OPEB, and so that's been in my mind ever since I found out how big a number it was. And we're, on this, it says we're scheduled to be fully funded by 2038. Do you see that we're on that sort of trajectory, or does that just depend too much on the future?
I rely on the actuary reports for that.
And then a second question about that. I think that you said, I'm not sure that it's actually OPEB, but you said the teachers, and I heard the number 84 million unfunded.
Yes.
That's separate from OPEB, is it?
That's a liability for teachers' pensions for the state.
For the state.
That's Medfield's
share
cutout of that number.
Of the unfunded pension for the Medfield in the state system.
The state has an $84 million responsibility, unfunded, for Medfield.
So we have to catch up on that at some point. We have to pay it at some point.
I'm not familiar with the state's plans.
Okay, all right. But and that's not part of the OPEB. That's, I guess, what I was interested in.
Right. The town has responsibility for OPEB for teachers and town employees. Yeah.
But is that
OPEB applies to all town employees.
The 84 million is not part of the OPEB, which is, the OPEB is around 42 million or something, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah, the
OPEB is
84
not
million, the
42.
teachers is their retirement system. OPEB is the health insurance for both town employees and teachers.
Yeah, so it's on top of the OPEB.
And it's not 40, but it's not 42.
It's equivalent to the county retirement for everybody else.
It started at 42.
Yeah, all right, so that's stuck in my mind, thank you.
Yeah.
But that's, so I guess I wasn't aware of that 84 million until I heard you say it.
It's not your responsibility, but
Yeah, it's
it's
the
the
town's
state's responsibility on your
Commonwealth's
behalf.
responsibility.
And certainly,
Oh.
their
84 million is the
their budget
Commonwealth's
relates to us.
responsibility. Not for that, not for the 84
Oh,
million.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy then.
Other than 3-year taxes at some point.
Yes. Yeah, trust me, you're paying for it.
But it's not the property taxes, so.
Yep. I have, I didn't always mention that in meetings, but I had a few clients actually read the footnote part of that and wanted to ask a little more about it, so I provide the information now.
I appreciate that you did, thank you. I think I'm all set. I was just gonna take a quick look through and see, because I highlighted some things, but I don't think I really had any specifics on them. Yeah, I think I'm all set. Thank you.
On the federal grant audit, I just wanted to mention the spending that was related to federal grants was 1.8 million. You're required to get a federal grant audit if you spend more than 750. That requirement is going to go up to $1 million in a year for fiscal 25. We wish it would go higher, but to the extent you may have ARPA or COVID money still in the number, your number could go down, but
So I did just look, and I just did find one of my other questions, which was, you say a strong increase in investment income, and it's over 539,000. I just wondered what the reason for that was, if you knew, or if Andrew, if you knew.
Frank, you can answer.
Sure.
Frank can answer for that.
Yeah, so Pete,
Oh.
all of the town's monies that are held, whether it be property tax levies or various revolving funds, trusts, all of that collects interest. And because of the sizable amount of funds that we have at one time, we earn and because we are a municipality, we have access to what's known as the Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust. We earn a pretty healthy interest rate on those funds. I think it's in the neighborhood of around 5%. And so when you take all of that money and you multiply it by the 5% return, I think this year, for next year, we are estimating about $800,000 in investment income.
But the $539,000 increase is just because the interest rates have gone up? Is that the reason, or?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I'll start with where Pete was at on the comments. Because I'm used to company audits,
right.
I was looking for the management comments, and I didn't, like after an audit, there's usually a back section that it's just the opinions of the auditors on ways you're running your business and what you might do to be better. I couldn't really find those in here, which either says, nope, you guys are doing just fine, or it says, well, we don't really do that for these kinds of audits.
My management letters are kind of a tradition. They're not actually in audit standards.
Correct.
And aren't really required.
Yep.
I've been doing this long enough that I don't want to write up minor comments. I maybe verbalize them, just so that mountains don't get made out of molehills situations. We've written up very serious situations in several towns before, and if there was one, we would write them up.
Yeah, I think I was probably asking, so in the past, we have gotten some comments from auditors, and they're not serious situations, they're
Right.
observations about this
Correct.
is how you do it, you might think about doing it this way better. And because I couldn't find that here,
Yep.
I was saying either under Christine's leadership, we've gotten really good, which is entirely possible, or you don't do that the same way. And it's not a criticism, I just was looking for it, I couldn't find it, and I was trying to understand why. Not as a criticism.
If we had some minor one, we may have had some minor ones, and we call them point sheets, and we verbally discuss them with the client.
Okay.
Then there's some other ones, you could always write up these ivory tower recommendations, like, I always mention cybersecurity, especially related to public safety and education that has personal records beyond just, other types of records. We work in a couple town halls that are brand new because the other one burned down. Well, what's your disaster recovery plan if something happened to the town hall? So, we always emphasize that kind of backup so that you can start operations again and protect your data.
Mm-hmm.
So, we always verbally discuss those.
Okay, so whatever, the people that probably had to hear it, heard it, I'm not gonna find it here, which is, it's not a criticism, that just
Yeah.
was looking. I've gotta ask you what probably will be a dumbly framed question, so just tolerate me, please. OPEB, the return on the OPEB balance that we have in the trust for the year this covers, was something on the order of about 5.98%.
Mm-hmm.
We have that money invested in PRIT, so it's about as core an investment option as we can. In the write-up, I believe for the pension fund for the teachers, maybe it sounded like the state got something like a 8 or 9% return, and I found myself saying, how is it that this? I think it was the Teachers Retirement Fund. How is it they were able to get a return that was like 4% higher than we were able to get? And you may just say that's a dumb question. You don't understand.
I'd like to know for
fine.
myself.
Huh?
I'd like to know for myself.
Okay, well, I'll have to look at that one again, but I looked, because I was looking for the return, and when we talked about, I think it was the teacher's pension return, it was like significantly higher. This is like going back, I think, 2 years. The return was so much higher. I thought we were already in the state's premier investment trust, but we didn't make the same return.
There's been a lot of differences in the last few years, because obviously interest rates went up.
Yeah.
And I myself question sometimes, we're invested in long-term interest items when interest is zero. That didn't make sense to me. But I'm not an investment advisor, and some of those reports we get are from investment advisors that you may be using or may not. So I've seen some returns not be very good in the year when rates went up, and you don't have a problem if you hold them to maturity, but if you've got longer term instruments that started out at low rates and rates go up, it's not a good on the market value at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the other question, on page 81, you said there were two reports. One was the town, and one was the federal grants.
Right.
But then on page 81, it's Town of Medfield, Massachusetts, Medfield Public Schools Independent Accountants Report. Is that, and it's on applying agreed upon procedures. So this may just be a procedural review. When I read it, I said, gee, do we get a separate, audit report on the school operation distinct from the town? I don't think so, because you've got all the town numbers you got the town-wide numbers on the town side, but what is that thing that starts on page 81?
81?
Yeah. Well, it's the cover sheet. I know what it says, that it's the Independent Accountants Report on applying agreed upon procedures year ended in June 30, 2023. So it's for the school, Medfield Public Schools.
Well, there's a third report.
Okay.
We issued a separate date. That's just on the school's end of year report.
It looked good. It looked like there were a couple places where they fill out forms
Right.
wrong, but
I forgot to bring that one because it's
Okay.
it's completely separate engagement
okay,
on the end of year report the school prepares.
okay,
And that's called an agreed upon procedures engagement. We don't give an opinion.
okay. And that's, the overall books in the town, including the schools, though, are covered in the main report you just talked about, right?
Right.
The schools don't have a separate accounting.
No, they're part of
Just
the
procedures. Okay, when I
major
saw it there, it
financial
almost looked
statements,
like it was its own report. I said,
That's-
"Wait a minute, do
that's-
they get audited
The end
separately?
year report is just a
Okay,
state report
yeah,
they require, and about a little more than 10 years ago, they wanted that to start being reviewed.
okay. So for anyone who's listening in the public, I'm asking this question not because I think there's a problem. It actually looked good. I just didn't know why the report was there, and the two comments that I saw, or three comments, had to do with the form that had a number in the wrong
Yep.
spot that was supposed to be in another spot. And it was they canceled out from an accounting standpoint. So this is not
Yep.
hunting for anything here. Just, I wondered what it was. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's it.
This was very impressive, unbelievably thorough. I was talking to Christine earlier. I said, I think this is the first time, at least me being on board, that I've seen one.
I can get you a couple back.
What's that?
I have a few.
But no, so this is the first one that would have been in a packet that I would have seen, though, right?
It was the first one that went in the packet. Last year's came separately as just a report to you.
Yeah.
And we did the year-end audit review with the warrant committee last year.
Okay.
So this year we're doing the year-end audit review with you.
This is fantastic, and it was nice to see that there weren't any red flags. That our team here, which is outstanding, did a great job. So thank you so much, and very much appreciate you coming in person and reviewing this with us.
Yep. Thank you for employing our firm and giving me some work.
Well,
See you next year.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Any
Thanks.
questions from? All right. Thank you very much, Rob.
Good day.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Chris Potts and Bill Pope to request the posting of signs around town as part of the launch of the Zulo Gallery augmented reality exhibit using historically inspired themes, evolution of a small town. Details? Do you want me to go through the details, or do you want to go through the details? I'll read what we have here. The QR public art sign request should be for May 15th to June 23rd. Each QR code would be printed on no larger than 8.5 by 11 laminated paper and attached to a wooden stake, metal wand, sign frame, or nearby tree or window if available. And all or most signs on public versus private property. If private, we will get that permission too. Public locations might include sidewalk, lawn area adjacent to the street if applicable. There would be roughly 14 to 15 outdoor locations for the public art QR code signs. Some exact locations TBD and can be updated before the select board meeting, but I'll read through what you have here, which is townhouse, library, gazebo, 2 to 3 different signs, peak house in the garden, Zulo gallery outside. When you say outside,
That was supposed to be inside.
Inside and outside.
okay, well it says outside, so it should be inside. Meeting house.
Inside and outside. Both.
Both, okay. Oh, we'll add the inside to the outside. Meeting house, First Parish UU, Baker's Pond, former Ennis residence / studio, former Medfield State Hospital, 2 different locations. In the quad area more or less, should we be looking, or do you?
Yes, in the quad area, but there's one down by the cemetery.
There's one at the cemetery.
Okay. EV charging stations behind Bank of America, Historical Society, Jack the Dog, and Jack the Dog Power Box on Main Street. So I'll pass the baton to you.
Okay, thanks. So the Zulo Gallery is very excited to have this new exhibit on view, and it was created through a very generous grant from the Medfield Foundation, which we're very appreciative of, Legacy Fund. And so the exhibit started, and this is a groundbreaking exhibit for the gallery because there's no artwork really in the gallery. It's all spread around town using this app from a company called Hoverlay in augmented reality art. And so basically it's where artists create the work on their computer and then you view it on your phone or your iPad at the location where it is. And so our challenge, it's been a good one, has been trying to work with the artist and have artwork located around town where they've decided they were inspired to create a piece and letting people know how to view it and how to interact with it. And in fact, it's more than just viewing it. It's really, a lot of them are 3Ds, and a lot of them allow you to interact on your phone and walk through and walk around the artwork. So it's very exciting, and it's a great show. But when the artwork's here around town, we thought it might be very beneficial to have QR codes where people might just pique their curiosity and wonder what's going on. And so if we had a QR code where the piece is located, they could bring it up there on their phone and view it right there without even knowing anything about the Zulo Gallery at the time. So our request then, do you have your little example there?
Yep.
Is to have a QR code. We're not sure exactly where we would place it, but it would be somewhere near where the artwork is located. Viewable, but inobtrusive. We don't want to, just take over the area, but we want it to be somewhere where somebody might see it and be curious and bring it up on their phone and see what the artwork's all about. And so that is our request.
So the QR code would then, you go to a restaurant, you see a QR code, it'll bring you to the website and then bring right up to the menu. That's going to bring you to the app to view, or immediately to the
It would bring you
artist
to the app, and then the app would start to load. You'd see it on your phone, and then the artwork would become visible.
I'm assuming you have to accept the app.
You need to have the Hoverlay app
Yeah,
on
you
your
would
phone.
download the app.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to show your examples? Did you have?
Yeah, I don't, do you think it'll work?
We can try.
Ooh, cool.
So we had done a few videos of people on their phone, and that's one of the things too. When you're at the piece of artwork, you can, through the Hoverlay app, hit a button that will take a picture, and some of the works were created specifically with that in mind. That's what would load on your phone, and then you would point that at the QR code, and then the work would load.
Yeah, and if you didn't have the app already loaded, it would automatically prompt you to load the app to your phone.
And there's nothing anyone has to worry about what the app is going to be doing behind the scenes, any security issues. as pure and clean as it can be. Okay.
Yes.
And like Bill said, in terms of location, you know, like at the townhouse, for example, maybe put it in the window, for example, instead of putting it, you know, on the lawn. You can kind of look at every site and figure out what's the most appropriate in terms of location.
We also had built into the location, if there were concerns about traffic or where people what they should be aware of.
Right.
When that loads on your phone, that says things like, you know, be aware of traffic or watch out what's behind you. You know, gives you some cues, because the idea is that you don't just sit there on your phone, but you kind of move with your phone with the artwork.
So this will give you, let me start from the beginning. This will give you a sense of, that's Jack the dog.
Yeah.
So you can see his face, head moving.
Yeah.
This is,
So this is in the Zulo Gallery. There's a piece that loads, you know, when you're standing there, you don't see it, but on your phone you do. And there's music playing, and one of the astronauts you can move about and kind of change the orbit. It's really a fun piece. You can see the astronaut moving right there as people walking around. This one's up at the State Hospital, just a beautiful piece of artwork. And you can move those butterflies around so you can have people stand behind them, in front of them, and take their picture and so forth.
Okay.
And so there's 15 or 17 of these works around town. Some are more informational. Richard DeSorga narrates one actually on the cover of your card. This is very unique for this show, really. That's the QR code where you have to point it at the entering Medfield sign, and then Richard DeSorga starts to talk about the history of those buildings over there, and there's pictures that move around. And it's a very enjoyable piece.
Does he appear in a hologram?
That, maybe we'll work on that next time.
I think he was the one in the spacesuit that you could see there. I didn't realize they could do audio. So is this how Relay processes audio as well?
Yep.
I didn't appreciate that from the.
Is Jack the dog a slang name for that, or is that actually the name?
that's the name?
Really?
I think so.
That's Jack.
That painting?
But I don't think that's the name of the painting. Probably is. I think it's the name of the dog in the painting.
Well, that's what I assumed, but I didn't.
And the other nice benefit of this too is that, you know, there's in some of the historical sites in town, like the Peak House, they're all excited about this because it's gonna, you know, it'll help draw people to these other sites as well. So it'll be a nice attraction for them.
So is this like the second generation of when people used to see Pokemons in people's front yards?
That comes up a lot when we talk about this show.
They're gonna have the birding of Medfield
I
next
had one
year.
on my front lawn, don't ask me how it got there, my nephew. All right, cool. Don't ask me how it got there. Pete, any questions?
Yes, and comments. This is so cool.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I can't believe it. I really like it. So I get my first question is, how long are the QR codes going to stay around? Is that just the length of the exhibit, or are they permanent?
No, they're not permanent. There is an end date, but to be honest, I forget what it is. I think it might be 1 year.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this says a request of May 15th to June 23rd?
Well, that's the exhibit. So actually in the gallery, what we have, there are some works that you can view because we wanted the gallery to be open. And there are 11 stations for the 11 artists in the show that talks about their artist statement, which is something we'd like to link to this because some of the pieces are somewhat abstract, and also just hearing where the artist was coming from and what their idea was in creating this piece, I think is very beneficial. And there are a few pieces of artwork. We've taken photographs, so there is the presence inside the gallery too.
And that's just for the signs too. We'd make sure the signs were gone by that end date.
June.
Yeah.
Second comment is Jack the Dog on Main Street. It worries me that people are going to have to stand in 109.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is there are going to be two alternate sites. We're going to move Jack to the side. I have a poster, basically,
Oh, good.
a copy that we'll put on the side because I noticed that.
Yeah.
And then we'll have another outdoor one at the Historical Society.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Thanks for taking care of me.
Either that or it could be a traffic calming strategy.
Or not.
Don't quote me on that.
There you go.
That was just a joke.
Now, we're aware, as soon as people get into this, in the gallery, as a matter of fact, when you walk in, you'll notice it's wide open. The partitions are up. There's no tables or chairs because some of the work, you want to be walking around the gallery with your phone. It's not particularly dangerous, but, you know, your phone's small and you can see around you, but we want people to be aware of that they're moving with their phone and trying to interact at the same time.
So I'll just go back to the QR codes, because we have some QR codes on some of the historic buildings in town. It was an Eagle Scout project that I think I'm not sure that I've ever pointed my phone at them to listen to them, but I think it's a very cool project too. And I actually think that we have enough historic houses in Medfield that people might come here to take historic tours, walking tours of the historic sites in town. So just another thought.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about this that I've learned is that when Nicholas started to talk about the augmented reality, and you look around and you see the examples that his company has done, is that, you know, some of it it's strictly informational. Companies and institutions have used this that way. Some of it's entertainment. It's just kind of fun to interact with. And some of it's very fine art. It's abstract. You're not sure what it is, or, you know, you're trying to see what the artist was thinking when they created the piece. So it can be many different things.
So it just occurred to me that I bet some high school kids would love to get in on this. Is it too late for them to create augmented reality?
For this show it is, but I think this is just the beginning. I think that, you know, we tried to encourage Medfield High School, but everybody's busy. There's a lot going on. But this is something that I see as just the beginning for us using this type of art.
Yeah, what was really nice about it, because the grant, the Medfield Foundation grant, you know, most of the artists in the group that jumped onto this had never done it before. They were all traditional artists, you know, oil, watercolors, photography, and they really, you know, if you go up to the gallery and read their artist statements, I mean, it was very fun to talk to them about this, and it was, they really, you know, sort of pushed their creativity and pushed their boundaries, and they got really into it, and it was all professional development for them. That was for free. And it's great for the gallery too.
Yeah, no, it's a real win-win.
Yeah, you got the educational base to do this again, so.
Yeah, we're very pleased with the way it worked out. The artist did a great job, and it was really up to them. And we started with, I think, maybe 15 or 20, and then certain people showed an interest, and then some people tried to do it, they didn't have enough time, but some people really got involved with it, did some nice pieces, and we're really pleased with what they came up with.
I just have one practical logistics question.
Sure.
So that's the kind of sign that you put up. Is that like a replica or a sample of what a sign would look like?
It would be a sample, yeah.
So the only question I had is, would that be intuitively self-explanatory to somebody who hasn't, you know, like it was pretty cool on Medfield History Weekend when we were at the gallery. It was fun.
Sure.
But if I just found a barcode tacked to a telephone pole or, you know, on a sign, I assume maybe it's a real estate agent wanting me to, you know, take a look at something. So
sure, no,
is it self-explanatory enough where people would know what to do?
See what's here, Zulu Gallery augmented reality site.
And we could also add more, you know, I mean, depending.
It's bigger font.
Yeah, are you gonna do the logo, like I see the logo in the QR code on the postcard? Will each one of those have it so people will know they're actually, because I will say, right, so I was at CES and there was some QR codes and there were more than a handful of people like, I'm not touching a QR code. You know how many viruses are in those? So I just caution you that there are some people that may not do it just because you're loading something on somebody's phone and people can be very leery. And somebody's walking around town, they can swap that out, and Lord knows what somebody's potentially getting on their phone. I'm a tech geek, and that there are people at CES that will not do certain QR codes. So there's a way that you can make sure that
Sure.
you know they're yours,
Yeah.
and no one's come along and hijacked that.
They can be customized. You can put your own logo. You can do different things with it. And I think also that on the piece of paper that we have with the QR code, having some explanation about, you know, this is a show at the Zula Gallery or something like that, scan this to see the artwork, 17 locations around town. I think that's all helpful. You know, it's been an interesting challenge to reach that balance of trying to explain to people what this is, how to use it, but then not, you know, letting them explore it and let their curiosity kind of go with it too, because I think you're going to find that with the pieces. And you don't want, a lot of times you show this to people and they get frustrated. They go, what is this? I don't know how it works. You know, this isn't fun. And some of the pieces are like that. And some of them you have to be patient, let it evolve, and, you know, take your time and really kind of experience it.
I just monitor it for you guys, just so nobody
Yeah, no, it's a good
hijacks.
point.
Because I could easily hijack that if I wanted to, swap out that print, and you wouldn't know, but Lord knows what I could expose somebody to.
I just did this for tonight, so this would be like a laminated.
No, but I mean in general, like, because it's just there and anyone could come along and take it, if somebody wanted to be malicious, they could fake out and God knows what's pops up on their phone when they think they're getting your gallery stuff.
Hoverlay has one that has their logo on it.
They do, yeah, well, that's the one that's here, right here, yeah.
Try and use the Hoverlay.
Okay. No, but I've already got it loaded. I saw the Medfield sign come up.
Yeah.
You got me. All right, we're good.
We're good.
All right, this is great. Thank you
Good.
so much for
All right.
coming and explaining.
Thank you.
Anybody,
Thanks,
any
Liz.
questions?
Is Jack the dog on a leash?
Yeah. He's got a collar. I know that.
Jill's got jokes.
But I'm bummed.
Just permission to put up the QR codes.
So you need to vote to give them permission to proceed.
Okay. Motion?
I move that we approve the request for the posting of signs around town as part of the launch of the Zulo Gallery Augmented Reality exhibit using the historically inspired theme, Evolution of a Small Town. The specific locations are listed in the agenda.
Second.
Great.
Did you second it?
Mhm.
I second
Okay,
it.
sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent.
Thanks so
I do
much,
have a
guys.
comment from home. If the select board can move their microphones closer, people are having a hard time hearing you.
That's a rare criticism for me. All right.
Is the new mic working?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next one, number 4 here, Russet Morrow to request approval for an event held by the Kingsbury Club for their triathlon for kids on August 18th, starting at 8:30 a.m. with a swim at the Kingsbury Club, followed by a bike segment on the rail trail and running through the COA parking lot pending approval by public safety.
And I have just promoted, there we go.
All right.
Unmute, yep.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Mhm.
A little bit louder for you, my mic.
So as I said, we did a youth triathlon last year. It was our inaugural year. We're doing another one. We'd like to on August 18th. And really, it's a chance to encourage kids to try the world of multi-sport. We're opening it up to kids ages 5 to 15. They're going to swim in the Kingsbury pool. And what we'd like to do is ask permission to use the rail trail for the bike portion of the triathlon. You were kind enough to allow us to use it last year for the run. So this year, we'd like to use it for the bike. We're anticipating more kids this year. And last year, even with a few dozen kids, it got a little bit crowded riding around the club itself, so we feel like the rail trail kind of opened it up a little bit more. And then we'd like to use part of the Council on Aging lot to be part of the run course for the kids. We are hoping to wrap, sorry, I thought somebody had a question.
Nope.
Well, we think we'll wrap the event up between 9:30 and 10. It's not a long event. The kids are swimming at most, depending on the ages, either 25 yards, 50 yards, or 100 yards. They're biking a mile or a mile and a half, and then they're running quarter of a mile to about 3/4 of a mile, so it's not a long event. We will have ample volunteers, and we will, as we did last year, we can post signs along the rail trail a couple of weeks beforehand, just kind of warning people it's going to happen. And the club is also going to tell its members to please stay away from the club prior to 10 in the morning. So they are discouraging people to come on that day, or they will discourage people to come that day.
Madam Chair.
Good.
So are you looking for approval for the overall event? Because the COA parking lot technically is under care, custody, and control of COA.
Yes, and they've been working with the Council on Aging and with Deputy Chief McGrath about this.
So it's more of approval for the overall event then.
Correct.
Yep. Pete, do you have any questions?
How many kids are likely to take part?
Well, last year we had a couple of dozen kids. This year we've banded together with 2 other youth triathlons in Massachusetts to make it a series. So we could have 30 kids again. We could have up to 100 kids.
Oh,
So
exciting.
we're not really sure.
Okay.
Somewhere around 30 to 100 kids.
If you hold it, they will come. Okay,
I
that's
hope it.
all.
Yeah,
Good luck.
thank you.
I don't have any questions.
I do have one question. On the rail trail, will you have kids going one way and then coming back, so you're gonna have them passing one another?
Yes, we're gonna have to loop out and back.
Okay.
So I'm anticipating, having to put cones in between, and we're gonna have lots of adult volunteers corralling them, because I'm anticipating some kids being better riders than others. So we're gonna try to account for having lanes on either side.
Yeah, because when I hear that, and obviously the young kids, I just want to make sure that there's enough room for everyone to get by. Because I've gone on like the Falmouth bike trail, and if you get a lot of people coming and going in opposite directions, it can get tricky.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm
Especially
opposed to it,
local.
and then in terms of communication, just so that people are not out with their dogs during that time span. Is that up to us to say, suggest like we do at the state hospital, like we let people know not to have their, if the hunt club kind of advises people to have their dogs unleashed that day. I don't even know if I'd want dogs on the trail during that time, because it's going to make it really complicated.
So the hunt club puts up the signs to warn people for their events.
Right.
So I would think we'd ask the
I think you'd ask the
Kingsbury
Kingsbury
Club
Club
to
to
put
do
up their
that.
signs.
We can do that for sure.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
would you suggest doing it?
Let people know, and if
before
the people
weekends
bring their dogs,
or
then
on
they just have to
Yeah.
get off. Like,
Well, it's just if you get, as long as you don't get, like I would say, by the water. If you go as far as the water, and you have people being pushed one way or the other.
well, beyond that, I assume you'll be crossing Harding Street, but not
We're
farm.
gonna have to.
But not farm.
Correct. You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I support it. I just want to just be careful that people. Well, now we know that the dogs are supposed to be on leash, even if they don't think they're supposed to be on leash.
They're pretty good on the rail trail. It's not too bad. The reason I'm hesitating is I'm hesitant to tell Kingsbury they can't use the rail trail, and I'm hesitant to tell the public they can't use the rail trail, because then we get into a weird thing where if you're going to tell the public they can't use the rail trail that's theirs, then probably the default is to not let people hold events on it. I'd rather notify people of the event so that they know what's going on. It's an hour, it's an hour and a half. And rather than prohibit anything, it's like, use your judgment. If it turns out to be a problem, then we have to reconcile it. But
Okay. So I guess my only comment, Russet, would be that it definitely post warning or heads up, August 18th from such and such and such and such. Just be aware, there'll be bikes on the trail, blah, 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 just so that we don't get people. I work out at I play pickleball almost every Sunday at 8:30. So I know you have people walking down with their dogs. It's a nice leisurely stroll. So just a heads up, just to avoid any chaos. But I definitely support it.
We can definitely do that. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
ready? I move that we approve the request of the Kingsbury Club for an event for their triathlon for kids on August 18th, starting at 8:30 a.m. with a swim at the Kingsbury Club, followed by a bike segment on the rail trail and running through the COA parking lot, pending approval by public safety and the COA for the running, pending approval by public safety and pending approval of the COA for the running component of the event.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, so 5 we do not need to address. That is off the agenda.
Yes.
And then moving to discussion on process for setting dog control off-leash areas pursuant to the new town meeting approved bylaw. So I wanted to, because the dog control bylaw got so much attention at town meeting, I didn't want to sweep it under the carpet. I would think right now, just to have a discussion as to kind of what we're thinking. In my position right here, I'm not looking to set anything in stone tonight, but I think there's conversations about how do we start looking at certain areas. I certainly respect Jill. Your committee worked super hard, and I was thrilled. There was some healthy discussion, but I was thrilled it got passed. So that was good. So I'll throw I'll show you one area right now that people have talked to me about. We haven't addressed it, but so at the state hospital, we specifically said off leash at Northfield, off leash in the quad. Excuse me, on leash in the quad, off leash in the Northfield, and off leash across the street, kind of near the Sledding Hill area. There is a track around the perimeter of the property, so you can park down on Hospital Road and come up either Cottage or come up through the Arboretum, which is just a dirt path. And as people have approached me over the last week, well, that wasn't addressed at town meeting, is this then deemed on-leash area? Because there are many, many people today that use it and they're off-leash. And so I thought, well, this would be one of those, how do we sort that out? How do we sort out, as we start looking at areas where we haven't clearly defined one way or the other, but yet we are seeing a habit of, listen, Rooney hasn't been on leash ever in that area, right? That's an area where, especially when we heard people in town meeting talk about being able to train your dog, being able to give it that space. When you look at the perimeter, certainly not the main campus, that is that ability to have that one-on-one. You don't tend to see packs of dogs there. You tend to see the one-on-ones. People they want to stay away from the north field. They don't want to go across the street into the field. It's also kind of tick-free, so it's nice you're just in the dirt, not in the high grass. So it's just kicking that idea around. How would we want to start thinking about the process? How we want to communicate it to the town so we let them know what we're thinking. So it's not just the three of us on a given Tuesday night, all of a sudden changing something and not making people aware. So Pete, any?
I don't think we want to spend a lot of time on this at the select board level. I think we should ask the committee to work on it and have discussions and open it up to public to come and talk to them and then come back to us with a recommendation.
Well, I think we have the authority to make a decision, but I actually agree with you, Pete. You all have, the representation on your committee represents a lot of different voices. My sense would be, well, let me back up. If I were to, for some reason, when I read the draft bylaw, in my head I registered that the contemplated off-leash areas were fundamentally the areas that are already off-leash, which would be the areas at the state hospital, but not the quad, and technically not the parking lot, because those are the two things we positively expressed rules about. And I gather, because I don't bring my dog down toward Wheelock, I gather there's an area in Wheelock that's also off-leash, and there's land south of Hospital Road, which is also off-leash. So the way I read the bylaw, I'm trying to remember whether I made it up in my head or whether it was what it said in the draft, was kind of like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to let those things be what they've been. And the biggest change to the bylaw was the issue around specifying leash, not positive voice control everywhere else. Having said that, it seems to me that probably there should be, unless we have strong views here, but probably there should be a series of public hearings where people can weigh in on that. I would trust your committee to they have enough representatives that you would be able to hear everybody's voice. And if you came in with a recommendation, that would be good. I would make a correction. I don't think it's just the North Field right now. It's basically what you get connected to the Dover Sherborne land. You've got all of the trails that go out there. Technically, the Bay Circuit Trail, because it's state property, has a sign, dogs have to be on a leash, but that's their problem to police, because I rarely see a dog on a leash on the Bay Circuit Trail. So just to be clear, right now, the place that's specified is the quad and the parking lots, because dogs have gotten killed in the parking lot. That would mean that right now, the cottage, all that is open. I'll make another comment. Within, let's pessimistically say 5 years, that project, assuming that the Trinity project happens, I'm guessing everything up through that property, all the way down to Hospital Road, at least on that side of Hospital Road, going all the way up through that development is going to be leashed only, because it's going to basically be private. So as a practical matter, somewhere down the road, if there's off-leash areas at the hospital, it's going to be the North Field and north, because the rest of it is going to be a housing development.
Well, you'll still have the road that I'm talking about, specifically talking about coming up the dirt road, still ours, because it's Arboretum. It's the public road going by the parking lot. It's the public road that brings people into the North Field.
I'm telling you that I don't think any of that will be off leash by the time we have 334. I'm making a comment about practical reality. It's not an opinion.
Well, only because there's no cars, so it's still going to be. I don't believe Trinity's touching any of what I'm just talking about.
I'm saying when there are 334 apartments occupied, we will hear from the people who live there if we have dogs that run loose on all periphery roads, but not in their yards. They won't want that. Perhaps for no other reason than there'll be dog poop in the yards for people that don't control their dogs. But I just think that's where we're gonna wind up. I'm not, it's not a position, it's a forecast. That's kind of what's gonna happen.
Well, and you just hit on another really sensitive point, which is the pictures that Pete shared, the pictures that Christine shared, and we've got to sort out what we're doing with trash at the state hospital. Because we can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't say it's a volunteer that's going to do it that doesn't live in Medfield, and then someone wants to petition to use the property, and we go, oh, it's town-owned land, we're going to charge. You know, it's like, it is our land. There's no other great, it's town-owned land. A gentleman, God bless him, for years has volunteered trash cans up there, and it's getting out of control. So at this point, I'm in a strong favor of treat it like a national park, and we should be winding down the trash cans and forcing people take out what you bring in. And if there are no trash cans, we're going to force people to start bringing their coffee mugs, their Starbucks plastic cups, all of that stuff off property. It's just gotten out of control because it's become convenient. I don't know, and I can't claim whether dog walkers are just dumping their stuff there and not putting it in their van and bringing it back to their commercial facilities. But I think that is something, Jill, that is something we really do need to hone in on. But I think it's a conversation that I can have one-off with Christine to figure out how do we start moving forward. But I do want to get the message out that I believe trash cans are going away.
I respectfully would ask you to define what forcing people means as a practical matter.
Well, let's put it this way. I would, if we see people leaving trash, and
Who's we?
Anyone up there, right? And you see it, it's like, okay, there is no trash. So if you're going to leave it there, please pick it up. And if that means we ask the chief to have our dog control officer spend a little bit more time up there, it's a privilege, not a right, to be there. And if people don't want to take their trash out, then they shouldn't be going up there.
So right now we have barrels, and if you take a walk back there, you'll see people that can't even bother to hang on to the bags long enough to make it a barrel. So my point is, I actually think if we want to get serious about this, we have to actually make it easy for people to do what we will want them to do. If we make it harder for them to do what we want them to do, fewer of them will do it. This is a good, worthwhile debate, but I don't think you're going to coerce people, because if we're saying we're going to rely on a dog control officer to do, or animal control officer, this is going on 7 days a week during all, daylight hours.
Well, I've seen it at Wheelock where people leave it, someone will go, hey, excuse me, pick it up, right? And if someone is bold enough to be like, I don't feel like it, I would have no problem taking a picture of their license plate, walking right back to the car and saying, see this? It can get contentious, but it doesn't have to be. But people don't have the right to litter. We have litter fines. So even if anything, it's a citation. You don't want to pick it up? Good, that just costs you $25, $50, $100.
So for what it's worth, I don't think that's a workable solution, but we can have a longer discussion.
But let me ask you, so I'm not arguing, what are you suggesting the town is going to manage trash cans up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would do, is make it, we probably need more trash, given how quickly the two that are there fill up. And then the pile, even of the people who are trying to do it, then the pile accumulates. We need more trash cans, and that means we need to clean them up, and so it's a cost to the town. But I don't think you solve that problem by making it harder for people and become strident, because I don't think we can afford.
Why does it work in the national parks?
Well, because you have ranger. Yeah, I mean, if you want a full staff up there, it can work.
Well, Frank, guess what we're doing this summer? I want a uniform. I'm borrowing Gus's horse. I think if we're going to do that, I did have a conversation with Mo about it last night, because I saw some pictures over the weekend, and it is a health hazard.
Yeah.
I can't believe people are piling up what's already there on top of what's already there. The problem is we are not able to dispose of that on the tip floor, the amount that is being left there every day. So we're going to have to find a third-party company to have them come in to do that. Trash is different than dog poop. I think we need to make that differentiation. Are we removing dog poop and people's trash? Are we just doing receptacles for? We need to have a conversation. Let's put it on the agenda for next one, so we can have an extended conversation about it where it's on the agenda. But it is really, really become a
trash can and poop can. That
really
makes
an
it a little
issue.
bit easier to.
It's really an issue now.
And if we go down this path, so as you do that, I think we need to get a realistic estimate of the cost.
Yes.
But I think, Pete, you're the one that's advocated for some sort of a registration and you pay for a fee. I have
a way
no
of doing
problem
it. I haven't
with
necessarily
basically, if you want to walk your
advocated.
dog, you pay the fee, and the fee is a function of the cost to keep the place free. I don't think it should
Right.
fall in all
Which
that.
a medallion. It's what
which-
these guys have talked about
Right,
in
and
the
I
public
think
forum.
that's what Jill and her group has talked about as being the second step of where we were going.
Right.
You know, the first step was just addressing the leash law, but I don't think we can wait any longer to address this situation after the pictures that I saw this weekend.
I don't see our goal as running a dog park at the Medfield State Hospital.
Right.
And,
I agree.
I'm surprised at the number of dog walkers, professional dog walkers making money off of walking dogs, think that they have some sort
On
of
town-owned land.
right to make use of the Medfield State Hospital property. It makes it less appealing and enjoyable for other residents, I'm afraid.
Totally
And
agree.
a
Yeah,
lot of people
especially when we
don't go
hear-
there anymore because
Especially when we hear the dog walkers in the region all consider our place to be the best, which basically says we have the least rules or restrictions of anybody.
Yeah.
So it might be one thing to sit there and allow the dog walkers in town to take advantage of town resources, but it's another thing when Eastern Massachusetts thinks the Medfield State Hospital is a place to go and you want to walk your dog. And that's, I think, what we got.
So I would just suggest a couple factual corrections. Gus, I don't think you're talking about the Bay Circuit Trail. The Bay Circuit Trail is all south of Hospital Road. It's the Charles River Link Trail.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Goes
You're
from
right.
the
That's
State
correct.
Hospital over
Although-
towards Wellesley.
Although doesn't, the Bay Circuit Trail goes through the state land, though.
It doesn't go north of Hospital Road. It's all south of Hospital Road.
No, you can get on the Bay Circuit Trail from the Charles Woodland up
Runs
off
all the
of
way
Farm
from the
Street.
North Shore down.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
completed.
Right.
yet.
It
But-
comes
but
in,
you can
comes in
pick
from
the-
Sherburne on Route 27
Right.
and then cuts across the south of
I
Hospital Road.
just walked it 3 weeks ago trying to figure out how to, we went out the rail trail, I have a couple of high school classmates of mine, we went out the rail trail thinking we could cut across a saddle to get over the Charles Woodlands there, which is the trustees reservation off a farm, which ties into the Bay Circuit Trail.
We can,
It's way up, it's north, near the.
There are
near the
maps
Rocky
online,
Mountain.
we can pull
But
it
you're
up.
right,
Yeah.
it's,
We
but
can
you're
look
right
at the
about
map.
that.
I'm looking at, I'm trying to look it up right now.
The sign's at the overlook, and that's the Charles Link Trail. You're right.
no, I don't think that's the Bay Circuit Trail, but we can
That's
we can
not-
look at the map of the Bay Circuit Trail and figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Charles River Link.
Yeah, it's still the property, right?
It runs along the base of the overlook.
And the second correction is it's not a recent problem, Eileen. This has been going on for years with
No,
the
I-
dog poop up there.
No, I know, I get that. I mean, it's become worse since
It's
post-COVID.
been very bad for a very long time.
Well, I've always shook my head, and Christine knows this even before I got elected. Like, I could never understand, 1 minute we argue it's town-owned land, and then we're like, yeah, but let some volunteer take the cans. It's like, that's crazy. It's either our own land, and we take care of it, and God bless the volunteer man that tried, but it's just gotten out of control, and it shouldn't be his responsibility.
So John Thompson, who did work on dogs at the state hospital before your committee started, Jill, looked into ways of doing it. And one of his was to permit people for parking and to pay to, he looked into actually hiring people to go around and clean up the dog poop and what that would cost. And I mean, the town could figure that out, and if that's the solution, that's one possible solution, so.
I'm not encouraging people to leave it behind. Like, that's, for us to be picking stuff up is, but I will say, the medallion, I mean, we know it works in Newton, and that's a system that Frank has gone and met one-on-one, so we have we know they have a system that works. We know that they're going after dog walkers in some of their key parks, so, we can regroup. But Chris, you?
Chris Potts, just basic question. And this is
Turn the mic on.
Oh, sorry.
Is it on?
Should be on.
Is it on? Okay. And this isn't a recommendation at all. It's just a quick data point question. When was the last time that we increased our dog licensing fees? Has it always been $10?
I'd have to look, I don't
Okay, I'm just wondering if that might be a potential another source of revenue. Yeah, seems like it's been a while since we've increased it.
The way I look
Just
at
an
it is,
idea.
I don't want to go after the individual dog owner. I want to go after the people that are using the property, and especially the people who don't live in town.
Right,
Right?
absolutely.
And it's because the people who don't live in town come in, make it a mess, and walk out. And especially the dog walkers, like we went out. I had a very long conversation with Christine after town meeting. We don't let anyone do anything on town property for free. but we have commercial dog walking businesses
I agree.
using the property. I don't understand why. Like,
No.
we should be either saying you're not allowed, you should not be profiting on our property without sharing some of that, because no one else around town can use a tennis court, a field, a building, anything without some fee, because there's upkeep. And it's the only reason we'd be asking for the money, because we have this upkeep now of trying to clean out trash cans and pick up around the property.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm not going sort of after individual. I just want to just ask, historically, if we've thought about
You
increasing
can ask
it.
she could
Yeah.
probably give you that.
Yeah, just
I think
question.
I think it's in the bylaw, so I don't remember it being.
I know people complain about the fees as they stand, so.
And we have trouble collecting it.
Yeah, I know.
Not looking to prolong this, but I just have a comment and a question. So the comment is, one of the things you'll also have to think about is whether the dogs need to be on leash as they're walking, say, from the parking on Hospital Road up Cottage Street and then into the property and everything else. So you'll need to think about that. Because you haven't done it on the rest of the town streets. I don't think the bylaw did that, the leash law on the rest of the town streets.
I
This-
think the leash law now impacts every
Okay.
public way.
All right, so that's important, because now you've got a public way.
Except where it's specifically posted.
Okay, so again, like the parking lots, you need to think about the streets that lead up to the back, 'cause certainly during the construction and everything else, you're gonna be walking up there. A question, can we enforce any of these things that you're talking about, the penalties for littering or anything else? I seem to recall when Gus was pushing to get the dogs in the cemetery on leash and everything else, we had difficulty saying whether we could in fact enforce it or fine anybody or anything else. So I'm
can.
not saying to solve it now or even discuss it now, but you need to think about if you're gonna put a fee in for.
Than any other town, bylaw, fee
Littering.
or penalty. They're not self-enforcing. The legislature, in its wisdom, has not given us the right to lien people's property for failure to pay outstanding fines. So you have to go to the district court and find a
Right.
clerk magistrate who will give you the time of day.
So
Well, but
that's
here's
all.
the deal. The way I look at it, though, just a quickie, is if we issue a ticket and someone chooses not to pay it, that ticket just doesn't go away. So if
Yeah,
in
it
if in
does.
5 or if we go and ask for it to be enforced,
You have to go down and take out the tickets is a civil, non-criminal disposition. It's a way to avoid having to do the criminal process. If somebody chooses still to be a scofflaw, you by default back where you started from, have to go down and take out a criminal complaint.
We should ask
Go
our
to the
state
hearing.
reps to change the law.
They actually scrubbed it out of the Municipal Modernization Act in 2016. And they've done it since. I don't know what the problem is.
So I just wanted to go on record to say that you can't think you're gonna solve the problem by saying there's a $10 fine or whatever for lien, because you can't,
well, then we can ask them not to be on the property and then it's trespassing.
well, but again, that's
So,
what I'm
so
saying.
it's either $10 fine, or we can go to the extreme and say, now we know who you are, and if you're up here again, you're no longer welcome, and if you come up here again, you will be arrested, which is a lot worse than a $10 fine.
I would strongly, yes, but I strongly would recommend that you not go down the fine path, because if you can't enforce it, it's worthless.
The threat probably we have is if we have a difficult time getting cooperation from
Right.
dog owners, we change the rules for where dog owners can have their dogs
Yeah,
loose.
no, that's a sad
If
fact.
you wanna go there, there's a solution.
Yeah.
but,
Because littering, I did look, Christine knows this, when I was looking this all over, preparing for a meeting with you guys probably 2 months ago, I went through it all, and there are 3 levels of fines, and littering is littering, no matter whether you leave dog poop or a soda can. So we have the ability, and so our dog officer, our police officers have the ability to act. And then it's just a matter of, how far we follow up. So there are actions we can take.
It was a lot easier when Bill just had the microphone, could hand it to you.
But now we know people have to use the mic, right?
This is a better system. I like it.
Mel Seabold, Snyder Road. Just a question for Mark. What about willful violation of a town bylaw? It's criminal. We do it, when I was with the Brookline Police Department, there are actually several dog owners
Yeah,
who
it's
refuse.
criminal. The starting point with town bylaws that are violated are, there's a criminal enforcement mechanism, but as a practical matter, you can't get the district courts to do it because they don't view it seriously. So that is a very frustrating route. the legislature originally put the non-criminal disposition process on the books as an alternative, but if somebody chooses not to cooperate with that, by default, you're right back with the criminal disposition.
It's subject to arrest also.
I don't know about that.
It is. Trust me.
Makes sense.
But that was Brookline.
All right.
Medfield Mounted Police, here we come.
Oh, we have our officers on mountain bikes. There we go. All right, so let's move to some action items here. Vote to sign the contract with Energy Management Associates, Inc. to perform energy and audit services at town buildings to be funded by a $50,000 state earmark. Any discussion?
So,
Pete?
when this came up at the Energy Committee, Chris, I wasn't quite sure whether the Energy Committee people were on, I guess they're on board with this, aren't they? Have you talked to them individually, or Penny, or anybody?
They were favorable at the committee meeting, and then I've talked to several of them since that meeting, and they all seemed in favor of it when they reviewed the contract and the scope of work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is that all?
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
This is not really attacking doing this. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
wanted to understand it. Who oversees this contract on the town side?
It's going to be Frank and myself.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I know we got a $50K grant.
Mhm.
The way it was worded was it was $35K to do the 12 buildings.
Yep.
And then it carried, $50K grant. It doesn't surprise me, the proposal says, and then there's another $15K to do extra work. And the real question I had on it was that this group has done work for us in the past, and they, I gather, have looked at the high school and the public safety building?
Library.
Library, I'm sorry.
Yep.
There are 12 buildings. Do those 12 buildings include those two buildings?
Yes, because we've changed some of the things in the high school and the library since they originally did that study back in 2012.
Okay, so what my real question was, are we okay? Are we sure they're not simply going to take a look at stuff that we've been doing already and saying, you guys are doing a good job? And that constitutes performance. This is really, it's this ASHRAE review.
It's the ASHRAE
is
audit.
Truly looking at a higher level of performance around it. Okay.
Yes, and then depending on that first level of the audit, they'll determine if we have several problem buildings, then we'll use that $15,000 to dig deeper into those buildings and
So
come up with better
I just
solutions.
need to understand that.
Yep.
That's fine. I'm set.
Okay. No, I'm good.
I had one more question that I
Sure.
forgot to ask about data loggers. Are we going to do those, or are we going to see if we need them, or?
So we're going to do the first round for the 35,000, do all the buildings with the ASHRAE audit, and then we'll determine if we're going to do the data loggers at some of our, quote unquote, problem buildings.
Okay.
And then we'll put them in place there.
Okay.
Okay, motion?
I move that we sign the contract with Energy Management Associates, Inc. to perform energy audit services at town buildings to be funded by a $50,000 state earmark. Term of performance, May 14th, 2024 to June 30th, 2024, and with a not to exceed $50,000 limit.
Second.
All in
Just
favor?
added so much stuff that wasn't on the sheet that I had to check.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So silly question. So see this
Just
earmark?
checking to make sure you're paying attention, Pete.
If we didn't pass something like the MBTA communities, would this earmark be something that would potentially be in jeopardy?
Earmarks are not official grants. They are pork barrel projects that the local delegation puts into the budget.
Okay.
So it would be up to our delegation whether or not
If we're a
to
friendly
do that.
town or not.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
And according to the Globe this week, if you're the Speaker of the House or the Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, you get 7 times the amount of earmarks as you do if you're not.
That is very true.
Now you bring that up.
All right. Vote.
I will say, just in case our delegation is watching, they have been very good to us.
They have been very
over
good.
the last 5 years with earmarks, and we appreciate every single one of them.
Yes.
Marcus Vaughn got written about in that article in the Globe because he and John Rogers both got money for something in the Walpole High School or police station or something, and John Rogers got $100,000 for it, and I think that Marcus Vaughn got like $20,000, but John Rogers said it was an error that Marcus Vaughn got anything, or that's the way I understood it. He thought it was a clerical error that was going to get corrected.
All right. moving along here. Vote to sign the state standard contract form to accept an additional $20,000 earmark for the refurbishment and expansion of the Medfield Park tennis courts. Metacomet Park tennis courts. Any questions on that one?
No.
All right.
I had a two-part question. Are we actually expanding the tennis courts?
I will leave that to Park and Recreation to determine what the total amount of their earmark is going to be used for, but I believe this 20,000,
I want to say it's for windscreens and permanent
yeah,
seating.
windscreens, permanent seating, and new netting for the existing.
So it's referred, well, so should we leave the expansion out?
We consider the permanent seating around there to be an expansion of the Metacomet Tennis Park.
So the high school parents can watch the kids
So
without
there's going to be
having
more seats. Okay, that's good. And then only because I don't have a dog in this fight, but because the comments about paddleball that came out at the town meeting, or pickleball, I mean, I said paddleball, not pickle. Is this a strictly tennis or is this pickleball?
All right, so because there was an email sent from a resident that he spoke to a good source that you were already going down that path, and I wrote back and said that you're exploring a lot of options, but there is nothing engraved in stone that says anything is going to happen. I know for the high school team, you have to have 4 unpainted tennis courts, or we can't have a varsity tennis team in town. So,
Okay, I'm good. Ready?
okay. We good? Motion?
Yeah, I move that we sign the state standard contract form to accept an additional $20,000 earmark for the refurbishment and expansion of the Metacomet Park tennis courts.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, authorize the town administrator to renew the town's police and fire 111,
111F.
111?
111F.
111F,
It's
okay.
referred to as 111F.
111F, injured on duty insurance policy with VFIS. Nothing tricky there?
I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
So what is it we're actually approving? I printed out the document. There's like 4 different versions of coverage. I don't think they're additive, but maybe they are. So what are we actually covering? What are we actually approving?
Hold on one sec. I pulled my.
And I forget why we need this in the.
Because we
They
didn't
don't
have
get-
it for a while, and then the town had to pay out of its own pocket.
We used to not have insurance. We now carry insurance for it. Police and fire are not eligible for workers' compensation if they are injured on duty, so they fall
All
under
right,
the
that's what I
111F
didn't
statute.
remember. Thank you.
Yes, so the renewal option is you will see that there are lists for what the basic cost could be and what the basic plus the optional. We're choosing all the base plus optionals, which is a total of $76,973.
So each, okay.
We sent you the whole quotation from them.
So
and
is
then
that the
we
one at the
choose-
very end?
Yes, that's the
That's helpful.
76,973.
Okay.
And that amount may increase just slightly. I did have a call with them today to see if they could increase coverage on one of the lines of benefit. We do have $90,000 budgeted for this, so this $76,000 may increase just slightly.
And we already have this coverage
We have this coverage existing. This is a renewal.
and at the same, we're not changing the level. This is what we already have.
This is what we have. I was concerned that one of the line items of our accidental death benefit was not high enough, and so I've asked them to give us an additional quote to see if we could raise that just slightly.
Okay, so that's, okay. Then do we, I'm not fighting the problem here.
No,
But are we approving 76,970? What are we actually being
I
asked to
would
approve?
ask you to authorize me to renew the contract up to $90,000, which is what is budgeted.
Up to 90,000, okay.
Okay.
You two are good with that?
I am good. You're good, Pete?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we authorize the town administrator to renew the town's police and fire 111F injured on duty insurance policy with VFIS for a premium up to $90,000.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, vote to sign the legal agreement with the firms of Barron and Budd PC, Sandman Law LLC, and Koshik Summich Parciola and Taylor LLC with respect to claims and/or actions for damages arising from contamination of water wells, by perfluorocantonic acid, perfluorooctane, sulfonate, or the first one is commonly known as PFO, I should say, and the second one is PFOS, and then aqueous forming foam, AAF, their degradation products and other contaminants of concern.
So just a quick question for town council. When it's my turn to make the motion, can I just say I move what she said?
No, I want you to read the whole thing.
All right, okay. Well, then I have a lot of questions. I do have questions, actually.
You could just say so moved.
Okay.
I actually had fun to learn how to pronounce these, because the people that even write these things and work on this, I chuckled watching the YouTube. Okay, Pete, any questions?
No.
Gus?
I
It's a
do.
good idea.
Yeah, I do have, and Mark, you can weigh in on these. My questions are all triggered by my reading of what's worded in here and things that appear to me, because I only rely on basic English, sounds not right. So it all has to do with the section around calculation of contingent fees and what follows after that.
Yep.
It says all contingent fees, and this is in paragraph A of calculation of contingent fee. And for those who are watching, the basic setup here is that the lawyers that are supposed to be representing us here are saying they have a 25% contingent fee on the gross recovery that we get. So they'll get a quarter of whatever we recover. It says all contingent fees are to be calculated based on client's gross recovery before deduction of costs and expenses as defined in paragraph 8. Now, if I then go to paragraph 8, the expenses, if I'm reading it right,
Yeah.
include the expenses that the lawyer themselves charge to us that we're supposed to pay them. So it sounds like the lawyer is getting 25% of the gross recovery, including the money that we would be reimbursing the lawyer for expenses. And these are serious expenses because potentially the lawyer could decide that it's important to file another court case and hire another lawyer. So I'm just reading this,
Yep, I thought the same
and it sounds like it's like you're both reimbursing the lawyer for the expenses, then paying 25% on top of that, unless I'm just not reading it right. So that's
The
my first
usual
question.
way it works is that you pay the contingency on the gross amount collected,
Yeah.
and then you repay the attorney for the cost that they've
Right,
incurred.
that's
Well, that's what
industry
it says.
standard. That's not unique to this.
But that says, but if the gross recovery,
Give an example. I read this
what I'm
afternoon.
getting- if I would have expected them to say, listen, we get 25% of the gross recovery less any reimbursable expenses that you've paid us.
Right.
Because we're paying them reimbursement of the expenses, and then this is saying we're paying 25% on top of those expenses because we're paying it out of the gross recovery.
You're paying it, it's the other way. You take, the lawyers get their fee right off the top.
Well, fee's a different issue, but this is
That's what that is,
expenses.
the 25%.
Yeah, but then they give a definition afterwards. So it's
And
like,
the expenses, they get reimbursed for the expenses that they've laid out, if they've laid out it.
oh, they have.
Well,
You-
they
They give
could.
plenty of examples.
So what's the justification, in other words, what's the justification of 25% of the gross recovery plus I get the expenses, which are included as the cost? That's the part I don't get.
Yeah.
It's like you should get reimbursed out of the expenses out of the gross recovery, and the net is what you get 25%. You already get 100%
No,
reimbursement.
because it doesn't work that way, okay? I mean, I've done this, Pete's done it. First of all, as far as Massachusetts law goes, it's all governed by the Supreme Judicial Court, including fees and the reasonableness of them. And even this is subject to court review if any questions arose. That being said, yeah, sure, my mind went totally blank.
So-
in the case, they don't get their
No, oh, no, I know what it is. The clients theoretically are always liable for the expenses. The lawyers cannot legally pay those. They just upfront it on behalf of the client on the basis that clients can't afford to incur those expenses themselves, so the attorneys front it, but they then get paid back from the client's portion of the settlement. That's how any injury case works. This just happens
Well,
to
but
be a big.
the lawyer's expenses to do what the lawyers, there's the expense that the lawyers incur to do what they're doing. I get that part, which is why the contingency is as high as it is. That piece I get. This is the reimbursable expenses of the lawyers, not their expenses. It's the expenses that they incur that they want to be reimbursed for. I'm just saying, but that should come out of the gross recovery, and then the 25% should be left, because it's our expense too. We're not recovering it. It's your expense. We're paying you your expense. We're not recovering that. We're just passing it through to reimburse you for your expenses. Now, what you're saying, Mark, is, well, but lawyers know how to write these things, and this is the standard, and I won't fight that. I just want to, my understanding was this doesn't sound right at all, but I will understand if you're saying, yeah, this is the way lawyers do it, because they figured out how to word it in a way, and I'll leave it there. I'm just making the observation.
It's been, the starting point was when contingent fees first came into vogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because of personal injury, the evolution of a personal injury law, and the ability, it's why you see the ads on television and all that, because the average injured individual can't afford to pay out of his own pocket to front the expenses to get a recovery.
So just to put some reality, if this was like, oh, it's reproduction expenses and I got mileage because I had to go to your office a couple times, I'd understand it. But this thing says client agrees that attorney may retain such special outside counsel to represent client when attorney deems such assistance to be reasonably necessary. I doubt those counsels are going to be cheap. So basically,
it's unlikely. Again, why we're getting involved in this, and the focus has been two settlements of major class actions that have big chunks of money sitting there, and nobody's incurred these expenses. Going forward, which is what you're also retaining them for, you're not retaining them just for the two settlements, because this is ongoing. As additional defendants or potential defendants are identified, then a determination will be made whether it makes sense to proceed against them and what that involves. And that may involve outside consultants, experts, including legal, whatever.
But those show up as expenses to the lawyer. What I'm getting at is that could be
They're not,
large legal
that's
expense.
not office overhead. That's expenses that are the client's expenses incurred by the attorney on the client's behalf.
Okay.
And
We'll leave it there.
incidentally, the
We'll leave it there.
25% is relatively low. It's because of the fact it's on such a scale that's a 25%.
Right. So that was my first question. Then it says gross recovery means the total recovery, which is then present value of the monetary payments, fair market value of any non-monetary property and or services to be transferred. I get that. And or any attorney's fees recovered by client as part of any cause of action that provides a basis for such an award. Underneath that, it says recovery may come from any source, including but not limited to the adverse parties to the action and or their insurance companies and or any third party, whether or not a party to the action. The contingent fee is calculated by multiplying gross recovery by the fee percentage. What happens if another company reaches a court settlement? Like as we had in the opioid, we agreed to join the settlement for a couple of companies, and then we joined another settlement for a couple more companies. The way I read this says then these are only two companies that are involved in this thing, but this thing, when it says, or any third party, whether or not a party to the action, that says, so if yet a third company joins in on this, they're a third party, not party to this action, and anything we get from them also goes to these guys.
Only if the money becomes available to you.
Well, it will in that second, I mean, we're getting money from the second opioid settlement. So you see what I'm saying? At least with the opioid, there were a couple companies that settled.
Right.
And we joined that. And then there were a couple of other
Because those were actions brought by attorneys general, and that's not happening with this. So far, this is not happening with the PFAS litigation.
So if a third company joined in on the settlement for PFAS, that would be just put into a single big pot, and we would get a bigger settlement? Or would it be what I'm worried about is a separate settlement distinct from the first one. The wording that I see here says, anything you recover, we get.
Whether they're doing anything.
This is, the only thing that this has in common with the opioid litigation is the scale of it. Because as you dig into the details here, it's a completely different premise. It's not, the public health and safety is not affected the way it was immediately with opioid addiction and the impacts on communities and all. PFAS is way more subtle. You heard when Bill was here, that the EPA's new standard is parts per trillion. Parts per trillion. It's beyond trace, and that's what they're building this into, and it's an evolving thing. So far, 2 major chemical companies have simply made a business judgment to cut their losses. Leave us alone. Here's a pot of money. Leave us alone.
So
And that happened with asbestos earlier. That's the better analogy, the asbestos stuff.
So if a third and fourth company decided to do the same thing, am I wrong in how I'm reading this, that would also be included in their contingency fee?
If you're eligible for recovery, if it becomes available, they will represent you to participate in the disposition of that settlement as well.
So it's automatic that if unless we choose to withdraw from them, it would be automatic. Anything else that jumps in here would be them representing us.
Yes, so it's an ongoing effort to
I
bring in
understand.
more, because you heard what was said, that whatever money we get is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost to remediate.
Okay. So recovery, going back up, recovery may come from any source, including but not limited, the then present value of any monetary payments.
Gus, which
Fair market value of
Gus,
any,
Gus, which paragraph are you in?
I'm back up under B, under definitions, under gross recovery.
Page 2.
There's 3 things that constitute gross recovery. The then present value of any monetary payments to be made to client. The fair market value of any non-monetary property and or services to be transferred and or rendered for the benefit of client, and or any attorney's fees recovered by client as part of any cause of action that provides a basis for such an award. Down at the bottom of that section B, it says the attorney's fees will be paid out of the initial lump sum payment if there are sufficient funds to satisfy the attorney's fee. If there are insufficient funds to pay the attorney's fees in full from the initial lump sum payment, the balance owed to the attorney will be paid from subsequent payments to client before there is any distribution to the client. I don't think this is a problem, but if you had a non-monetary property and services, that's got some sort of a revenue stream associated with it. And my question was, what if you have an annuity stream and it fails down the road? Does the recovery of the lawyer, is it less? Because everything's paid up front, but if you had a failure down the road where you don't recover what you thought you were supposed to recover, do you then claw back a contingency fee, or is it the lawyer already has theirs? I just want to know. It's clear the lawyer says you pay us first.
Both the state courts where the law firms are located, their high courts have ultimate review authority, as does the federal judges where these cases are pending. So these documents are all subject to judges' approvals. If something arose that wasn't contemplated or was a clear distortion, whatever, somebody could bring it to either the judicial oversight or the judge's supervision for review and approval.
Okay. Paragraph 9, division of attorney's fees. It lays out at the conclusion of the case, if a recovery is made on behalf of client of the total attorney's fee of 25% described in paragraph 7 above, client agrees that the fees will be divided as follows, and it's Barron and Budd gets 40%, right. Salmon gets 20%, Kosich Sumich gets 40%. And I'm sitting there saying, why do we have any say at all in how those law firms want to divvy up the overall contingency?
It's really for protection of you, because those law firms, it's a contract, they're going to sign as well. They're agreeing, they're not going to come chasing after you for more.
Okay.
it's laid out for everybody's benefit.
They also have an ethical obligation to tell us as the client how their fees are being divided.
Yeah, it was more that we were agreeing to it, that I don't mind. It's like, that's what you guys
yeah.
want to do, fine, but I
like
don't
when
know
you-
why we're being asked to agree.
It's like when you buy a house, you sign about 40 documents that say,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Actually, there's been litigation, I'm sure Pete's more as aware of it as I am, where firms that really go out there and they're just doing marketing and then they're referring cases to people who really know how to litigate, and there's a split of the fee.
Okay,
And
so this is putting it in upfront.
That's
Okay.
laying it out.
I think this is my last one. Yeah,
Okay, the best
paragraph
one.
12.
You're gonna have to read this whole question now.
Gus, I think the other issue is that I think this is probably a take it or leave it contract. I don't think you
Well,
can negotiate this.
absolutely it is. So
Because
if we're
they're-
going to take it or leave it, I want to be sure I know what exposures and what commitments we're making long-term. Because I'm reading some things that say, boy, take it or leave it. And I'm reading it saying, and we could get screwed.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking these questions, to make
No,
sure,
I mean,
and
it's-
I'm prepared
I
to
think
be
it's where
told
it's a
I don't know.
contingent fee. I mean, we stand to make money if they're successful on our behalf.
Well, let's test that. Paragraph 12, this is my last one. Order or agreement for payment of attorney's fees or costs by another party. If a court orders or the parties to the dispute agree that another party shall pay some or all of client's attorney's fees, costs, or both, attorney shall be entitled to the greater of A, the amount of any attorney's fees awarded by the court or included in the settlement, or B, the percentage or other formula applied to the recovery amount, not including such attorney's fees. So I got it. So the court-ordered fees, if the court-ordered fees are less than the full 25% of contingency fees, do they just become a windfall to the law firm because we still owe the 25% contingency? And maybe, as I'm reading it this time, maybe not, because it says the percentage or other formula applied to the recovery amount, not including such attorney's fees. So you would take, if the court ordered that somebody else had to pay part of the attorney's fees, that would be included as part of the 25% contingency fee of the total that we recover?
It goes back to how either there's a judgment or a settlement and how that's structured. And whether or not, for instance, and I don't know the answer to this offhand, although I anecdotally believe that either 3M or Dow or both have a separate element of the lump sum which represents attorney's fees.
Gus, the rate that I read that one is that they get the higher of their
Right.
25%, or if the court awards attorney's
You're not
fees.
gonna double dip.
But this is my question. So if they get the higher, now one situation is the court awards a fee that's greater than our 25%, and then I think what that says is, then you don't owe us anything. We're going to go with the higher court award. I'm saying if the court award is lower than the 25% we would owe, does the lawyer say, no, you keep the court award, we want the 25%? Or do they say, we'll take the court award, but we also get the 25%? Or are we saying it's 25% less the court award is what we would continue? I just, as I read it, I didn't understand for sure how those three situations played out.
I'm not sure of all your permutations there, but this paragraph, I think, just says that they get the 25%, or if the court awards a higher amount, they get the higher amount.
Who pays the 25%? If the court awards an amount less than the 25%, then the lawyers will say, we want the 25%. That part I got. Who pays? Where does the money for that 25% come from?
Well, this is attorney's fees from the other side. Our attorney's fees being ordered paid by the defendants. And so this is money on top of our gross award, basically.
That's my question. Is that how that works? Is they get money on
Well,
top
that's
of the gross award if unless the gross award
It
is
may
higher?
not even apply really, other than theoretically. As a practical matter, the way this is playing out, I see it very remote that you'd get into that situation.
There are very few opportunities to get your attorney's fees paid by the other side. in our
Usually,
system.
there has to
Oh,
be
I
a
understand that,
statute
but,
to make.
I understand, but I
Unless
read,
there's
I
a
read the
special
words of it.
statute,
Yeah.
a
Right.
civil
They-
rights statute or
right.
something, or a
You
consumer
have to have
protection.
a statute authorizing it, and that's not the case here. These the PFAS stuff is not
Okay.
coming under that.
Ready for a motion?
No, I have a
Okay.
So, question. So, Mark, you brought this forward to us by a group in Boston that said they're gathering, I think there were 20% of the Commonwealth.
That's Sandman Law Offices, I think they're in Malden,
Okay, so Sandman is getting, what, 40%? Is that
20%.
20%? He's getting a,
So they're just out marketing the litigation.
so for that, their work was, we're gonna gather towns in the state of Massachusetts, whatever you get, we're gonna get 20% of that. The other two are actually fighting the fight in court.
And particularly the Texas firm, the one that begins with B's, really taking the lead. Those are the attorneys I've been on.
So
Zoom
Barron and
calls.
Bud is.
Yeah, Barron and Bud.
Okay. And are you confident when Gus just made the comment, it's kind of like take it or leave it, that other towns, whether it be Rentham, Walpole, Amherst,
Franklin.
they're not negotiating off of these terms, that everyone is sticking to it? Or are we missing the mark and we're the dummies that should have actually altered this in some way? Can you confirm that it is kind of like no one's negotiating the contracts, either take it
I
or
know
leave it?
Franklin didn't.
Well, that's one out of how many towns?
Well, I mean, that's my personal experience. And it's probably, that's their standard fee agreement, and
Is it out of the window of possibilities to reach out to the guy that's gonna collect 20% to say, you know what, it's Medfield Select Board.
if you had a particular situation involving PFAS that was just, liability was fairly clear cut, you lived next to an airport, you knew whose product it was, and you'd suffered significant damage, whatever, you might be in a position that your case is gonna take very little work and involve a bundle of money. You might be in a negotiating position, but we're not in that kind of a position in Franklin or any other, Medfield or any other community out this way.
So it's like, sign it, it's not gonna cost you any time or money, it's not gonna cost us any time or money.
It will cost you time. Don't, they're gonna require that you supply them with records in order to prepare the claim forms. So it's gonna require some time on the part of personnel here.
So who's
It's
gonna
all, it's all on our website, so it's very easy to turn all of that information over.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. All right.
So
well,
our expectation is strong that we are going to get some net positive payment out of this.
Can we put it towards the
regards.
dog office?
Yeah, maybe. Let's hope it'll cover that. Okay. All right, you ready?
You already have at least one remediation plant in process, so.
All right, ready?
All right, go ahead.
I move that we sign the legal agreement with the firms of Barron and Bud PC, Sandman Law LLC, and Kosich, Sumich, Parciola, and Taylor LLC
As
with respect.
printed in the agenda.
Huh?
As printed in the agenda, unless you want to read through all those.
do.
Oh, okay, all right.
He's taking a personal
With respect
challenge.
to claims and or actions for damages arising from contamination of water and water wells by perfluorooctanoic acid, PFOA, perfluorooctane sulfonate, PFOS, aqueous film, forming foam, AFFF, their degradation products, and other contaminants of concern.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, Mel, you've been so patient. Okay, so number 12, announce vacancies for Parks and Recreation Commission. Discussion of appointment process. Come on up. So what's happening?
Around the first of the year, a little after the first of the year, we had one of our commissioners resign, Kirsty Young, and we basically had 4 commissioners attending meetings and any type of votes, et cetera. It's, I mean, we have a quorum of 3, but as far as voting, would like to have a full commission. I have personally heard from a former commissioner who was interested and had seen the listing on the agenda, and I'm here just to basically inquire about the process. I've been 14 years. We've never had this.
Yep, so I can lay out the process. So what we'll do is, you have already accepted Kirsty Young's resignation. We will post on the website that we have an opening on the Parks and Recreation Commission. We will ask people to send in their resumes and letter of interest to the board. And then we will make them due by June 4th. And then at the June 11th Select Board meeting, we will seek candidates, and by roll call vote of the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Select Board, we can move that forward. So very similar to what you just did recently for the school committee.
Okay.
And this will be to fulfill the term until the next election, which will be March of 2025.
A quick question. So if the person resigned in January, why weren't we able to put an opening on the town election?
Kirsty's resignation occurred after papers had to be turned in for the election.
Right.
Ah, okay, okay. Does that work for you?
It does.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
No questions.
And the process, the actual election process is not spelled out in the statute, so it's left up to you, and it can be way simpler than the school
Oh, yeah.
vote was.
Great. Thank you very much.
That sounds good. All
Good.
right.
So
Thank you.
we'll get that advertising kicked off tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mel. All right, citizens comment? Anything else? 11, we are holding off.
11 we're holding on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't say that. I knew it on my notes. I didn't say it out loud. So no citizens comment?
I have nothing for citizens
All
comment.
right, so consent agenda. Approve request for this year's CF Cycle for Life, which is scheduled for Saturday, October 5th, and will cross Medfield between miles 18.5 and 21.4. From Dover via Harding Street, taking a right onto Hospital Road, taking a right onto Route 27, and then taking a left onto Route 115, heading into Millis. Pete?
No questions.
Nope. Ready?
No, looks good.
I'm ready. Yep.
Yep.
I move that we approve the request for this year's CF Cycle for Life, which is scheduled for Saturday, October 5th, crossing Medfield in accordance with the details read by the chair. This
right.
one's
I
no
like
fun.
it.
This one's no fun.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Meeting minutes, we don't have any to approve. Town administrator updates.
So I have a few this evening. One, I just want to recognize all of our town employees. Last week was Public Service Week, May 5th to the 11th. We were a little tied up with town meeting, so I didn't get the opportunity to thank them. But I'd really like to thank all of our employees that helped town meeting be such a success. There's so many behind-the-scenes meetings and logistics and details that everybody doesn't get to see before we actually have the town meeting. So just thank you for everybody who makes that work so well. Thank you to Chris Allen, our sound engineer, for town meeting, who donates his time, and to Medfield TV for all of their work getting that up and running, especially with our satellite rooms. And most importantly, thank you to the 489 people who showed up at town meeting and participated. It's so great to see a packed gym. I really love that. Some sad news tonight. Amy Colleran, our facilities director of 7 years, is moving on to the private sector and leaving us. So we wish her well at the next step in her career, and we are officially looking for a new facilities director. Those of you who may have seen on social media that the AEDs have been installed.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you to the Board of Health and the fire chief for everybody getting that project up and running. It's been about 2 years from beginning to end. And it looks fantastic. And also thank you to the local delegation. That project was also done with a partial earmark as well as some ARPA funding. So, and then the last thing is tomorrow is the last day to opt out for the CCA. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Brittany in our office. People are stopping by all the time, and she's sitting down and working with them. So if you have any questions, please come in.
That's helpful. Good.
And that's it for this evening.
All right, so let's see what we got. Next meeting dates. We can check off May 6th, and we can check off May 14th. May 28th, June 11th, June 25th, June 16th, August 20th. September 3rd is the state primary election. September 10th, September 17th, October 1st, October 15th, Then we have November 5th being the presidential election, November 12th, November 19th, December 3rd, and December 17th. There you go. All right, select board reports. Pete?
Just first on the future meeting dates, I would ask that we just try to have it be the first and third Tuesdays of the month. I think that's helpful to the people in town, that they come to expect the select board to meet on those dates.
The only problem with that is there are a few vacations for the summer,
We
and
do
we
have
are
some things that do
we
for
are
these,
going
but-
to our summer schedule in July and August,
Yep.
and then we do have to avoid both the state primary election and the presidential election.
And I'll
Do we
have,
have to,
I'll
or
have
do
a
we
conflict on
opt to?
October 1st.
I think we opt to. I think that's the appropriate thing to do, is to not hold a meeting the night of an election.
I'll be out of town the 1st.
So I had my select board office hours last Friday, had someone come in about the Medfield community electricity and about issues on the Medfield Rail Trail. I met with a state rep candidate named Patrick Gatto from Needham, and his son Brooks actually came too. That was fun. We had a noise complaint about the gun ranges, and I shared what I knew about gun ranges, because we found out years ago that we basically have no rights with respect to noise from gun ranges. Let's see, there was a request to all the select board members about Northern Lights access at the state hospital. And I think that just, the way that worked out, I think we need to create a better system for responding to when somebody emails the three of us, that we should figure out a way of dealing with that that works better. The Energy Committee met, and they're always very busy. And there were actually, Chris, I didn't understand. I don't know what that vehicle roadmap thing is. Do you know about that?
It's a road to electrification of our vehicles, what it would cost if we were going to electrify the fleet that we
So
have.
the roadmap is how to get to electrification of them. And then Hilly Passes talked about the need for a zero vehicle first policy. And so I guess that's something that they're going to likely comes to the select board and to the school committee at some point. I'm still working with them on my suggested design guidelines for the town in terms of not a change in the building code, but a suggestion, series of suggestions, like please don't install fossil fuel burning systems in new construction. The climate action plan needs to have waste data included. The Energy Committee is going to be the sponsor for the fourth quarter of the Medfield Energy Environmental Action. Everybody, and they're going to use the opt-in stretch code for that effort. And the last thing is the Medfield Foundation's Legacy Fund awarded its grants, and the grants for 2024 went to Medfield TV for their podcasting equipment, Peak House Historical Society for what Rob Gregg is calling a traveling trunk that will go to the third graders and have all kinds of information in the traveling trunk. And the Dwight Derby House got a grant to install a millinery shop that one of the Dwight ladies had there when she found herself a single parent in the 1800s. And that's it.
Okay, on the CCA front, Christine mentioned tomorrow's the last opt-out date to opt out and not have anything whatsoever to do. You can always opt out. It's just that you won't get picked up at all if you opt out by tomorrow. But on the publicity front, I participated in the information session that was at the held at the COA on the 1st of May. I sat down and had a nice time with both Bob Winograd and Megan Sullivan at the information booth at the state hospital in the afternoon. Unfortunately, the magician on the stage, for some reason, was of greater interest to the people than those of us who would have liked to have been able to share community choice aggregation information. I also fielded one one pushback or one inquiry about CCA and sent a detailed response back. The people that were skeptical, the observation I would make is the people who were skeptical about the CCA, at least that were publicly vocal about it, by and large, were thoughtful when they heard the reasons, the answers and responses to their concerns. A number of them actually posted and said, I'm gonna sign up for this. And that's not to say that they weren't gonna watch to see where Eversource takes it. So it's not a question that I'm gonna sign up and close my eyes, but I actually it's one of those rare cases where you have a debate where people have views, and when they have the discussion, they actually come out and they actually go so far as to let everybody else that was paying attention to their first message know that they've concluded maybe this is a good idea, and I appreciated that. The annual town meeting was fun, and I just want to tip my hat to our new town moderator for the stellar job that he did. And that's without not tipping my hat to Scott McDermott for the stellar job he's done for 20 years. But I thought Mike made some changes, and I actually thought they were some pretty good changes, and I thought he did nice job. You met with one candidate, I guess Pete. I met with Joshua Tarski, who's another person who's running for Denise Garlick's position, and had a nice discussion with him. I think he's working his way through the town, trying to talk to people. There was, to Pete's point about the discussions that went on around the IE district, there was an MS Teams call on the 8th of May in preparation for this meeting, so I participated in that. And then the only other thing, just a heads up, I got a pretty comprehensive secondhand complaint about a dog incident in town last Sunday. The advice that I relayed back was that the person who was directly involved in the incident should file a formal complaint. If the secondhand information I got was accurate, this was a serious incident, probably should call for town action with a dog that apparently has been a problem, but nobody's reported it. So that'll maybe be coming in the near future.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, excellent. All right, I'll start with the town meeting. I thought went really well. I echo your sentiments. There are a lot of people who put in a lot of time, and people don't realize how much goes on behind the scenes. So it went over well. It was well attended. Our new moderator did awesome. Hopefully he runs for re-election. That would be a great thing. And then I didn't get a chance at the town meeting to publicly thank the dog committee because it was just kind of crazy. But I do want to, as I said when I opened the meeting, I do thank you guys. And Jill, I know you had a family commitment, but Neil stood up and Mark was helpful and clarified some comments that were made. So that was awesome. And then there certainly has been some discussion about pickleball courts. I've got enough emails and people commenting. So from what I've picked up, Metacomet there's nothing written in stone. And even for the school, one of the comments I heard was, they would look at potentially just doing one because they would have space to do one. But nothing's going to go on and just, without any regard to the neighbors. So I just think that people need to realize no one in this town is going to try to do anything sneaky, that if there's something that's to be done, there'll be questions brought up, there'll be plenty of information shared, and then only done with thoughtful movement forward. I'm sure we're all very happy the MBTA community warrant article passed, so we can continue to move forward with Trinity. Any comments from Trinity post-meeting? Have they anything shaken out from their end, from the state, or just same old, same old?
No, the only thing that it impacts is whether or not we're eligible for Housing Works grants. So we'll know once we apply for the next round, which is due at the beginning of June.
Cool.
So,
okay.
But no, they're very excited that we can move forward with that.
Great. And then I had an opportunity, Carolyn Casey, because I've been asking a lot of questions just about, what does some of these new schools look like versus what does Dale Street look like. I had a chance to tour the Pine Hill School in Westwood. So if you take the back roads, like Gay Street into Legacy Place over there. It's the old school that was on the left that's been demolished, and now they built this brand new school for K through 5. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. So I had a chance to tour it with Carolyn and with Dr. Marson. They really explained a lot of the things that they're looking to do for new schools, why they have these common areas, just some things to do with the library. Really nice school. It's a great tour. And then they followed up with me because I've never had a formal tour of Dale Street. So the next day I went and had a formal tour with the principal, Steve Grenham, And I found that wildly enlightening. It is amazing what they've done with that school. And like I was making a comment, like kids don't know any different. And that school is not, it's certainly not Pine Hills, but they've done a nice job. We certainly need to replace it or renovate it. Don't take this message the wrong way. But it's cherry. It's the kids just it's working, but it certainly needs to be addressed. But I found that to go back-to-back days was very, very helpful. And I was able to ask a lot of questions of the principal in Westwood, like if you could do it again, what would you look at doing differently? What are the teachers like? What are teachers commenting on now that you never thought they'd comment on? So a really good discussion, and obviously Carolyn Casey being part of the school building committee, that's dialogue that she can then share with the various members. But I do think it's important that we talk about, there are some public forums that are going to be coming up. I believe there's one tomorrow night. Wednesday night, tomorrow night, at Dale Street Cafeteria, 7 p.m. And then there'll be follow-up ones, and they're really trying to be thoughtful of different times during the week, different days. So tomorrow you have a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at Dale Street Caf. Then you have a Sunday, May 19th at 4 p.m. at the Dale Street School. Then Wednesday, May 29th at 11 a.m. right here in this room. And then Friday, May 31st, 10:30 at the center over on Ice House Road. So that be that. I think that's, I have my Affordable Housing Trust meeting this Thursday. We haven't had a chance to hold one in a couple of months, so we'll be holding that on Thursday and go from there.
There was a man here who delivered a handwritten note to us at the beginning of the meeting. I was here, so he gave it to me, and it's been emailed to all of us now. They're residents of Dale Street, and they had concerns about speeding and reckless driving on Dale Street, so I just want him to know that that's been shared. I told him.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read that yet.
I told him to send it to the police chief.
I would point out that over this last month, the officers, as you know, you have seen them out in front of the town hall, issued over 300 citations. That's not stops, that's citations, both for speeding and distracted driving. So they are out there enforcing, and I will ask the chief to up the presence on Dale Street, but they are definitely giving the tickets. We're hearing about it.
And they're checking on phone use too.
Right.
Distracted
That's
driving.
the distracted driving.
Well, and what's great is I know that, like, for example, at the town meeting, what was really nice is that 3 of the new officers that we had actually just approved at the prior select board meeting, they came, as well as some additional officers, and just to see the interaction, I love that we have a very new, young, energetic police force, and they are making themselves present. I was kidding. I'm like, I don't like to address someone and not know their name. And there's things that they're going to be doing going forward to make it even easier for you putting a name and a face together. So I just applaud what's going on. I'm super excited for our police department. And we get updates from the chief, just certain things that go on that are really great for this town. And they're very uplifting to know that these guys and gals are coming out of the academy eager to serve the town of Medfield. So kudos. So, all right, motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All right. The meeting is adjourned.
We didn't vote on it.
Oh, all right. All those in favor? Aye, aye. I just waited. I knew you weren't going to say no. No. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.